Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. It is Monday, January 26th. We are live. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This is the final week of January that we are wrapping up for this month, which has been a very volatile month in a variety of different ways. We have big tech earnings that are starting this week. Meta, Microsoft, and Tesla all on Wednesday. Apple is going to be on Thursday, and then we're going to have Amazon next week. So big tech earnings officially will start off. We had Netflix last week, but obviously we've got a lot of the more important companies happening this week. And not to mention on Wednesday, we have FOMC. So I think this is going to be one of those weeks where we have a lot of things happen. The S&P 500 obviously flirting with 7,000. It is trying to get there. Unfortunately, we have not got there yet. In the pre-markets, we are basically flat on the S&P 500. There are other assets that are hitting brand new highs in the pre-market. I think you guys know what they are, gold and silver. We will talk about the commodity super cycle that continues to happen. S&P 500 right there is flat. Realistically, to get the S&P 500 to move up, given the Russell is massively outperforming by about 500% compared to the S&P 500 so far this year, you're going to need the large caps to participate. And over the next 4 days, we're going to see if the large caps can officially participate. So it's going to be an exciting week. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of headlines this morning. Every single day is a new day for the market where we have a variety of headlines, especially over the past couple of years. Just there's not enough time in the day to discuss what is going on. You have Coreweave that's up 10% in the pre-markets. Why? Because Nvidia just invested another $2.7 billion. We will talk about that. USAR, rare earth company, that's up 21% in the pre-markets, hit $40 at one point in the pre-markets. Right now it's at $30, up 21%. Why? Because the United States is going to take a 10% stake and invest $1.6 billion into the company for rare earths. And then obviously over the weekend, if people have been keeping up with the events in Minnesota, it has led to an increased chance for a government shutdown as Democrats are feeling more on the side of eliminating DHS and ICE funding based on those events that have happened. And that complicates the picture again. Now, usually the markets tend to go up when we have a government shutdown, but there is a little bit of pain in regards to the fact that, well, millions of federal workers are not going to be paid if there is a government shutdown. We have 6 days to figure out, or 5 days if we end up getting this government shutdown. And there is an estimate that GDP growth will be slashed by 1 or 2% in Q4. Now, maybe private sector growth will be so strong that we don't have to deal with that. Q3 GDP growth was pretty strong at 4.7%. But if we have another government shutdown, given the debt spending and the deficit spending, I don't think we can afford to have growth slow down. So you have a lot of things that are now complicating the picture. And this week we will have to discuss all of those things that end up playing out. There we go. We got a lot to talk about. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hopefully everyone had a great weekend. There was obviously a lot of snow over the weekend. In my part of Jersey, I don't think we felt it as bad. I know there's other parts of Jersey that got hit pretty hard. And you guys were saying last night how bad it was. I mean, we definitely got a foot. It didn't feel like a foot to me. It felt more like, I don't know, 5-6 inches. But I guess in certain other parts of Jersey, there was a foot of snow. I think New York tapped out at 11.5, at least New York City. And then, Chicago looks like you got 2 feet. Like it was obviously pretty aggressive in different parts of the world. And it seems like it is still snowing today. A lot of schools have already closed down in the tri-state area, but hopefully everyone is safe. We didn't lose any power, which was nice. So, I mean, that was a good thing, at least in this part, but there have been other states that seemingly have lost a lot more power. So I hope everyone's been staying safe. I think this is going to take another couple days before the snowstorm is officially done. And then we'll get to move on, and hopefully it's not that much more of an issue. All right, let's get started. For some reason, everyone here is talking about the same thing in the chat. I don't know why you guys keep mentioning these 3 letters. It's a little confusing here, but nonetheless, we've got stuff to talk about. So it took a lot for me to just not smile for the past 3 minutes, but still have no idea why you guys are talking about that. Anyway, I think let's get through a couple headlines quickly, then we'll get into the shutdown stuff because I think that is bigger news. First of all, Nvidia and Coreweave. Nvidia has, I think now about 40 billion in cash, and they don't really know what to do with it. So looks like they're giving it to their partners that, can keep buying chips. Nvidia, 2 billion into Coreweave, 87.20. So they're already up on that investment. They're targeting 5 gigawatts of AI factories by 2030, with Coreweave planning early deployments of NVIDIA's Rubin platform plus Vera CPUs and Bluefield systems. Obviously, the reason that NVIDIA is giving Coreweave $2 billion is because Coreweave is going to be buying more of the Vera Rubin chips from NVIDIA. I mean, it makes sense. Coreweave has a lot of demand to resell and license these chips. NVIDIA wants to make sure they can lock in that demand. So the investment right here, probably a no-brainer for NVIDIA. Remember, NVIDIA has a $6.3 billion put on Coreweave, which is that if Coreweave can't sell a certain amount of chips by 2030, NVIDIA will buy them. So there's a lot of confidence NVIDIA has in Coreweave. There's, what is it, at 10% stake? It's like a 9.7% stake at this point that they have in the company. Coreweave right there up 8%. And honestly, Nebius was almost breaking below 92 this morning. Nebius getting a 3% pump right there. I think because of this Coreweave deal, if NVIDIA is ready to backstop some of these data center companies, then Nebius, IREN, et cetera, are probably going to get the benefit of the doubt as well. Nebius right there, up 2%. IREN, which was red, still red, but you're seeing that green candle right there. Now it's at 56.41, which is not too bad. Coreweave, the big winner. I don't know if the market opens, if this one ends up getting sold into a typical sell the news, especially because it's like, it's NVIDIA. It's not like it's some crazy new partner. Like Coreweave and NVIDIA have a very good relationship, but it is a strategic $2 billion investment that is good for the company. I just don't know if it's like that thing that'll take Coreweave back to 150, which it was at the highs, and then it fell all the way to 60. So it has made a nice run from 60 to 100. Question is if it can sustain that. Again, the data center plays continue to be the most volatile names out there. Coreweave up 7%, Nebius up 2%, and then IREN, that's down 0.2%. If you own Coreweave since last week, congratulations, as this one is now up 8%. Is this a circular deal? Yeah, but again, the way to hedge against that circularity is the chips, or are the chips that Coreweave is buying, are they actually going to have an ROI for the customers that are licensing them? And who are they reselling it to? I think that's what gets you back from the circular nature of it. Also, I mean, at the end of the day, NVIDIA is the top dog in this race. So they have more cash. It makes sense for them to invest in companies that are not only going to buy their chips, but the way Jensen explained it is that continues to prop up the broader AI ecosystem. Because if you have all these other smaller companies that are now benefiting from the excess capital that's there, they have a little bit of an easier time to spread AI across all the different sectors that they're working on. So is it circular? 100%, but is there an actual ROI from the chips that are being put out into the world? We're going to talk about Claude later. You're starting to see some real serious workflow use cases from AI via Anthropic, and that all depends on NVIDIA chips. So as long as Coreweave can continue supporting that ecosystem, even if they're getting an investment from NVIDIA, as long as they're making an ROI from that investment, I think it's not as problematic as it being circular. As you can see right here, Coreweave is now 87% of NVIDIA's entire equity holdings. You have Applied Digital at 4%, ARM Holdings, Nebius, Recursion Pharmaceuticals, and WeRide. You've been seeing a lot more companies buy WeRide. Grab has a stake in WeRide. Kathy has been buying more WeRide. It's another AI autonomous startup in China, I believe. And NVIDIA as well also has a stake in that one. So that's what we got with Coreweave and NVIDIA. NVIDIA not really benefiting from this news pre-market. NVIDIA, again, stuck at 186.73. It did bump a little bit last week based on that China headline of China allowing them to sell H200s, but that stock down 0.5% as Coreweave is up 8%. The government shutdown. All right, let's talk about it. Odds have gone from 15% to 80% based on the events that happened in Minnesota over the weekend. And here's a little bit of coverage on that, and then we'll talk about the implications of what that means on the stock market.
Becky, well, yeah, look, the chances of a shutdown, they've spiked after this weekend. Senate Democrats are now opposing funding for the Department of Homeland Security, saying that they need to address the federal agent who shot and killed a man this weekend and policies and procedures around that. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said in a statement that what's happening in Minnesota is appalling and unacceptable in any American city. Democrats sought common sense reforms in the Department of Homeland Security spending bill, but because of Republicans' refusal to stand up to President Trump, the DHS bill is woefully inadequate to rein in the abuses of ICE. Now, DHS funding, it's only one of 6 parts of the government that are set to run out of funding end of Friday, that's midnight on Saturday. And while the other 5 pieces of government funding have strong bipartisan support, sources tell me that Senate Republican leadership, they are not planning to remove DHS funding from this larger package. That increases the chances of a partial government shutdown that would include the Defense Department, would include healthcare programs, financial service agencies, and the Labor Department, which, remember, they do, of course, the jobs numbers and collect other data. Now, it's not clear exactly how a shutdown of DHS would impact ICE operations. If you remember Trump's mega bill last year, that provided a windfall $170 billion for the department, funding that they can use to continue current operations. Becky?
Emily, we just came off the longest government shutdown in our history. Has there ever been a precedent where you go through a long shutdown followed by a second shutdown within months?
I mean, Becky, that the last shutdown, as you mentioned, was historic in terms of how long it was. And frankly, it was something that senators continually told me on both sides of the aisle that they wanted to avoid. And it really seemed up until this weekend that they were going to be able to do so. Democrats had gotten some reforms in the DHS bill to address some of the things that were going on, things like funding for body cameras. But I think what you saw this weekend, the response that you've seen to it, you've seen Democrats who have partnered with Republicans repeatedly trying to open the government last time, who are now saying, look, there need to be some changes made. There needs to be a discussion about how to go forward. And until that happens, we cannot support additional DHS funding.
So there's 2 perspectives here. The Democratic perspective I've seen over the weekend is we cannot support more DHS and ICE funding based on how the events were interpreted over the weekend in Minnesota. The Republican stance from a variety of Republican senators was we need to continue supporting DHS and ICE funding, but we also need to have an in-depth investigation into what happened to figure out, was there a need for the officer to use the type of deadly force that they used? And so you have 2 perspectives right there that are obviously at odds with each other. And I mean, you've got 5 days to figure out if the conflicting narratives of the Democrats and Republicans on this situation are actually going to result in a meaningful shutdown for the government. Now, it would be unprecedented to have a government shutdown less than 3 months after the longest government shutdown we've had in history, which was 40 days back in October. The S&P 500 actually rallied about 1.8% during that time. So not necessarily bearish for markets, but remember, right after the shutdown ended, November, we had an ugly 5% drawdown. And maybe there were other things that contributed to that drawdown. But the point is, while the shutdown didn't necessarily show an impact on the markets in the short term, it might have coiled up and eventually had somewhat of an impact. So you talk about catalysts that could create a drawdown for the broader market. Greenland was one of those catalysts, and then it kind of got reversed. Earnings, we'll see if that's a catalyst. If the big tech companies miss, I think more likely than not, the big tech companies are going to be okay, and that might not be the catalyst. The next catalyst might be a shutdown, even though historically a shutdown doesn't end up being the biggest catalyst for pain in the market. So this coincides with the FOMC meeting that's going to be happening this week, which, by the way, there is less than a 3% chance we are getting a rate cut. So I don't think anyone should expect a rate cut. I think this is actually going to be a pretty boring FOMC meeting, given we already know that GDP is too hot and the labor market is too stable for us to get a rate cut. But the implication of how Jay Powell will be speaking about future rate cuts, this is going to be the last of his 4 FOMCs before May, when he is officially gone. And Rick Reeder looks like he's going to be the next Fed chair. He has a 60% chance on Polymarket, less than 5% a month ago. So it seems like someone knows something about why he would be the next Fed chair. That coincides with big tech earnings, along with the potential for this new government shutdown. So all 3 of those events will be conflicting this week, probably will increase volatility, but maybe there's a world where it doesn't have that much of an impact on volatility. Time will tell as we get through the end of this week. Before we get into the commodities in gold and silver, IONQ, which is a quantum company, is buying Skywater Technologies for $35 a share. This news came out at like 5 a.m. in the morning. It's up 7.7% right here. I can tell you a lot of people are pissed off about this deal. There were, if you've researched Skywater Technology at all, and I think Sam was on the show a couple weeks ago and he kind of gave us a little bit of a deep dive on it. You had people calling for $60 to $90 on this stock going towards the end of the year. I mean, it's a $1 billion company. $90 would put it at maybe $4 or $5 billion market cap. And the level of retail excitement plus potential and momentum that these guys were showing in the semiconductor space, I did not think they would give out for I think this was a $1.8 billion buyout from a quantum company, but that's what ended up happening. So what I saw today was, especially from Skywater Technology shareholders, was just a lot of anger. I mean, they got bought it for $35 a share. This thing hit above 35 yesterday in the overnight markets, which is kind of crazy. So it's almost like the Skywater team didn't really negotiate. I think Matt bought a little bit of it recently, right? I don't think they negotiated a big premium here, which makes you think, did these guys think they were super hyped up and like they just wanted to get the hell out and make an exit as soon as possible because they don't even think they're worth more than 1.8 billion? Or do they think this was a really good deal? Skywater shareholders are going to be getting 15 in cash and 20 of IONQ stock. And that is going to be how the deal ends up playing out. So, yeah, I didn't expect that. I was actually getting a little interested in these guys and starting to do some research. I really didn't expect them to take the buyout that quickly. But looks like M&A continues to heat up, and that's what we're seeing right here. Real quick on USA Rare Earth, USAR, that's up 20% right here. So a couple highlights from this. U.S. government funding will be dispersed based on milestones starting this year and ending in 2029. The Trump admin wanted to ensure the American taxpayer is never overcommitted to the plan. The Oklahoma plant will begin producing finished magnets this year. Supply agreements being put in place to provide rare earth oxides for the magnet until the Texas mine becomes operational later this decade. The company is likely to issue $600 million in additional equity to fund $4.1 billion in projected capital costs. Again, they're getting $1.6 billion by the Trump administration for a 10% stake. That stock up 20% right here in the pre-markets. And the PIPE transaction to invest in USAR was significantly oversubscribed. So if you're in the rare earth stocks, obviously USAR is making a massive move. MP right here in the pre-markets up about 5%, and CRML, that's been also on a tear, that's up 3%. Rare earth names, memory names, and the commodities continue to be some of the most exciting sectors of 2026, and they've paid off. And they seem like they're going to continue to pay off if the rare earth shortage and the commodity shortage continues to be top of mind for investors. Speaking of commodities, gold and silver, $108. It touched above 110 a couple hours ago on silver. It's up 5%. Gold's above 5,000. I think a lot of people are starting to say this is feeling pretty bubbly, because this is starting to get a bit ridiculous. In Shanghai, I think you're getting prices over 120 an ounce for silver. And yeah, it obviously feels a little bubbly. However, based on kind of the core fundamental argument around this, which is it's very simple to understand, the US dollar continues to be debased. Dixie, if you take a look at it right here, is at 97.18. This thing was pushing 98.50 last week. So seeing a dollar decrease on the Dixie is not necessarily the best thing in the world. And you're seeing the 10-year continue to stay in that 4.2% range. You have people selling off bonds, selling off the dollar, and they're rotating into metals. Now, is it something where one catalyst, like margin increasing requirements on a variety of brokerages in the CME, could immediately create a rug pull? Yeah, but it also feels fundamentally different than 2011, where that was the catalyst. As you can see right here, silver is now it was at $110. It's up a record 9 months in a row, which, you know, when you hear a stat like that, you think, okay, it's getting euphoric, parabolic. There's tons of retail money coming in, which there is a ton of retail money coming in. We looked at a couple of the charts last week around retail money crowding into silver and gold ETFs. But I don't know if you get this type of momentum on silver without institutional capital. And institutional capital is not just from hedge funds, but it's rather institutional capital coming from central banks, which we've talked about for the past couple of weeks now. They just seem to be diversifying into assets like gold and silver and away from the US dollar. This is something that Ray Dalio has been talking about for a long time. In fact, the dollar as a percentage of the global foreign reserves continues to go down. We have this chart from Bloomberg that showed that in 2000, it was at 60%, above 60%. In terms of a share of global foreign currency reserves. In 2025, it's at 40%. So it's one of those things where it's like, all right, if the dollar exposure continues to go down and people want to get into hard assets, gold and silver are your winners. And those are the ones that are continuing to win. If you've been in them, you deserve a big congrats. Peter Schiff, he's called this correctly over the past couple of years. I think Bitcoin has still outperformed gold in the past couple of years, or like the past 5 years. Obviously, crypto has not been doing the best so far. But, I mean, the commodity super cycle did not go fully unnoticed, and the people that loaded up really loaded up. Now, Once again, I was talking about it last week. I think copper is the next one to break out. It feels less like copper is in a bubble when you look at the supply demand shortages. We talked a lot about it last night. I'm going to try to come out with a Substack hopefully by tomorrow night that compiles a lot of research on copper. I did buy more COPEX, which is my exposure, on Friday. That one's up about 4% right here in the pre-markets. But when you look at the basic arguments that cause silver to go up, it's very similar for copper, and copper seems to have a bit more of an industrial use case around EVs, electric grids, data centers, et cetera. If you believe in that sort of broad-based revolution continuing to take place, seems like copper should be a winner. You've got Chamath who's screaming about it, Stanley Druckenmiller screaming about it. We looked at a lot of charts last night. It seems like this is an obvious play. My only fear is if silver and gold top out, just like if like the rare earth perception tops out, which it shouldn't because we need a lot of rare earths, but let's say it does. I think all the commodities go down with it. Platinum got new highs yesterday. Palladium got new highs. I feel like all of it gets hit. Uranium, which is another one that's starting to get a lot more momentum. I feel like if gold and silver put in a real top, then it doesn't matter if there's like a shortage or there's more demand versus supply. I feel like all the other assets get hit pretty hard. Like it feels like it's very hard to ignore that's going to happen. But when you look at a copper or a uranium compared to silver, they have been 4 or 5x'd. I mean, they're up, but they are not up in the way that silver and gold are up by any sense of the imagination. So it really does feel like there is a lot more momentum on the side of copper, but it is also something where you got to be careful when it comes to position sizing, because if silver does put in a top, then I don't know where this goes in from here. But it looks like there's no top in sight for silver. Silver right there up 6.7% in the pre-markets. Now, when people say that, that's when it tends to get a bit toppy, but like, shorting silver here, I feel like, we were talking about shorting silver at 70. That didn't work out. If we keep printing money and if the dollar continues to lose its status as being the #1 reserve currency, the fact that we're lowering rates and the 10-year can't come down means that people don't want the dollar. They don't want treasuries. They want silver and gold. And if that doesn't stop over the next 5 years, I mean, who knows if silver has to go down as much as it's expected to go down from here. So this is going to be really interesting. I have no idea how it plays out. I'm on the sideline for silver and gold. I do have a position in copper, and quite frankly, I do want to increase that based on the research that I've been doing. But I do recognize that if this does put it in a nasty top, and I'm just wondering what is the catalyst to create that nasty top? And I feel like it would have to be something where forces much larger than you and I come together and say, hey, we cannot allow silver to get as high as it's getting. Maybe that's the reason. But if not, then I think this might be able to continue going the way it goes. Let's talk about some of the trade deals over the weekend. So first of all, India signed some new stuff with Europe this morning. Here's what Besant had to say over the weekend about this, and then we'll talk about Canada and the United States.
That he has worked to negotiate a settlement on Russia, Ukraine. The U.S. has made much bigger sacrifices than the Europeans have. We have put 25% tariffs on India for buying Russian oil. Guess what happened last week? The Europeans signed a trade deal with India. And just to be clear again, the Russian oil goes into India, the refined products come out, and the Europeans buy the refined products. They are financing the war against themselves. So President Trump's leadership, we will eventually end this Ukraine-Russia war. That he has worked to negotiate a settlement on Russia.
So that's Besant talking about India and Europe. They did sign a new trade deal this morning with a new partnership, and that is something that it looks like investors are happy about. India's stock market has been pretty hit over the past 26 days, as this market is down about 5%. It's the worst in the entire world from an international perspective. As you can see right here, EU Commission, they tweeted, "Today we join India in celebrating Republic Day. Our partnership is built on a shared goal to tackle the world's greatest challenges. As we look forward to tomorrow's EU-India summit, we are ready to take our next step together." The deal is going to have a variety of different components to it. One of the main components is India reducing tariffs on European vehicles from like 110% to 40%. So trying to get some negotiations there for the EU and India to start working together in a much more easier way. Now, you also have Trump, which over the weekend said some stuff around Canada. The market didn't really react to it as aggressively because I don't think the market believes it anymore. But Trump did say if Governor Carney thinks he's going to make Canada a drop-off port for China to send goods and products into the United States, he's sorely mistaken. If Canada makes a deal with China, it will immediately be hit with a 100% tariff against all Canadian goods and products coming into the USA. So you had Trump issue that, I guess, warning to Canada. Now, Carney not taking it as seriously, kind of shrugged it off, didn't think it was that big of a deal. But nonetheless, you have a little bit of a strained relationship with the US and Canada based on China entering into the equation. Kind of, again, Mark, this was on Saturday. You saw the overnight futures kind of react a little bit to this, but realistically, they just did not care that much. So it wasn't a Greenland type of moment where it was so serious that the market would care. And the way Carney responded was just like, hey, we're going to do what's best for Canada and we'll figure out what happens. So it doesn't seem like that's going to be that important of an issue, but it was something that the market cared for a little bit. Now, in terms of the broader trade negotiations, we still don't have updates on what's going to be happening with Greenland. Again, we had a variety of details last week that weren't really sophisticated enough to say what the deal is, how much land is the United States getting, what type of sovereignty do we get, what type of rare earths do we get based on the land that we're getting. You had the Greenland PM come out and say he thinks there's a deal, but he doesn't know any details about the deal. So maybe we'll get more details this week. Same thing with the credit card interest rates capped at 10%. There were no details on that after that policy was introduced. So I think there's a lot more questions than answers in terms of this administration's approach on certain policies they've been putting out. And we just don't have a lot of those answers yet. So hopefully over the coming weeks, we get more of those answers. Some banks putting 6,000 an ounce by gold on their target. You know, JP Morgan had 5,000 by the end of this year. It happened by the end of this month, which is kind of crazy. So I think all the price targets are going to have to go up now on all these assets. It's kind of crazy, but it doesn't look like that's necessarily slowing down. Yeah, the $2,000 tariff dividends, that there's also no update on that. Trump was pretty adamant that people would get a $2,000 check. Again, Congress kind of has to approve that. So not sure if we're going to be getting that anytime soon. But regardless, you've got a lot of different policies going back and forth. And now with a shutdown, a ton of stuff is definitely not going to be able to get done if we do have a shutdown, which I think is going to be the next big component for the market to price in. And, you know, potentially will have a major impact on how the midterms take place going into the end of the year. Okay, macro updates. What else do we have? So we talked about silver, talked about gold. We talked about some of the trading stuff. USAR is up, Coreweave is up. Uber got a price target upgrade to $150, which is 82% upside from here. Uber, is that up in the pre-market? That's up 0.34%. SPY is green. Nvidia is down a little bit. Tesla, Meta, Microsoft, they have big earnings this week. That's going to be important. Meta right there, 664. That's up in the pre-markets. That was up 7% last week. That's up another 1% right here, 600 to 664, which is very nice. BTC is at 87.6. This one did fall below 89,000 this weekend. Tom Lee's Bitmine bought another 40,000 Ethereum. As of last week, ETH is just below 2,900. He wrote, in 2016, the story of Davos was AI and the fourth industrial revolution. And in the decade since, we've since witnessed the massive growth of AI and data centers and complete pivot by nations. A decade later, we view 2026 as the year policymakers and world leaders now view digital assets as central to the future of the financial system. In the past week, we acquired 40,302 ETH. And they now officially have 4.2 million ETH, which is about 3.52% of the overall supply, still trying to get to 5%. So you've got Tom Lee continuing to buy more Ethereum. AMD, another price target. My goodness, it's like 5 price targets over the past week that has been increased. 330 for AMD, 270 last week from Bernstein, and that really helped the stock. AMD right there, 256 in the pre-markets. The stock went from 200 to 256, got to 267 or 266 last week. 267.08 is the all-time high, so it's trying to get back up there. But you can see AMD continuing to get some more momentum. Intel, even after a 15% drawdown, one of the worst days it's ever had, continues to get hit, down about 2.49%. Although the price targets were increased for Intel because they didn't say demand was an issue, supply was an issue. I think Street's a bit scared of the execution as that one goes flat. Ethereum right there just below 2,900. Enphase down 2%. Verizon flat. Apple is up 1.3. Apple has had 8 losing weeks in a row. Hasn't happened since 2023. They've got earnings this week. This is going to be an important earnings. But that stock also flat. And then you got UNH. That's down 0.45% right now as well. Okay, so let's pull up. Oh, hold on. This is This is really important. Let me pull this up real quick. I think Austin just posted this in the chat. So this just came out. Oh, wait. Is this? Yeah, here it is. Okay, so we got Pelosi's, I think this is her final disclosure as she's going to be retiring soon. Is this it? Yeah, looks like this is it. So this is her final disclosure, or at least the latest disclosure. Let's see. So she bought, this report includes over 10 million in cumulative transaction value. She filed this for January 23rd. That was 3 days ago, over the past week. She bought AllianceBernstein on January 16th. She bought Google on January 16th. Bought more Amazon on January 16th. Bought Apple on December 30th, 2025. Bought Nvidia on December 30th, 2025. Bought more Tempest, bought more Vistra, and bought more Versant. You know, this is, if this is accurate, I'm going to go through the filing right here. This is very similar to what she did last year. She bought Apple, Google, and actually, I don't think she bought Apple, but she bought Google, Amazon, and Nvidia last year in December 2024, January 2025. All those ended up working out. It looks like she's doing the same thing right here. Google, Amazon, Nvidia, Tempest. She's had that for a long time. Makes sense. But you know what this is? She probably exercised her calls, and the calls count as a buy because she's buying. Here's the official SEC filing right here. And that might be the reason. Yeah, I was right. Yeah, here you go. Exercise 50 call options. There you go. Okay, so it's not net new buys. That's a very important distinction. She's not buying Google at 340. She's buying it at 150 because she's exercising. Okay, so she's exercising her calls, but she also bought new calls. Look at that. Well, they're in the money. Purchased 20 call options with a strike price of 150 and expiration date of January 15th, 2027. Okay, so she's buying in the money calls, exercising calls. Amazon, she bought 20 calls with a 120 strike of January 2027. Again, super in the money. She tends to do this often. And then she exercised 5,000 shares of Amazon from last year. Makes sense. What about Nvidia? 20 call options, strike price of 100. Once again, January 2027 in the money. And then she did sell 20,000 Nvidia shares of common stock. And then she exercised to buy 5,000 shares at $80 of Nvidia, which was from the call options last year. She sold 5,000 shares of PayPal. I don't know if she took a loss on that, but she sold 5,000 shares of PayPal. Tempest, she exercised her call options. And then Disney, she sold 10,000 shares. All right. So Nancy exercises Google, exercises Amazon, exercises Nvidia, buys new in the money call options on all three of those, and then she sells PayPal and Disney. This is, I think she's retiring this year, so this might be one of the last financial disclosures we see, because once she retires, I don't think she has to disclose anymore. But this is the latest filing over the last 45 days that you're getting from the world's greatest trader. There you go. Honestly, I agree with all this. Google, Amazon, Nvidia, yes. PayPal, Disney, no. I don't think anyone can disagree with those moves. So makes sense that that's what she's trying to make. The day Nancy actually buys Palantir is the day we all need to go all in. Once a government official at her ranking actually buys Palantir, that's when we know Palantir is going to get like $10 billion from the government. But we got to wait till that happens. All right, macro chart. So first of all, Japan and the United States, lots of reports over the weekend that the Fed is getting ready to print a ton of dollars and then take those dollars and buy Japanese yen. Why? Because the Japanese yen is depreciating at a rapid rate against the dollar. That is good to an extent. It is not good if it continues to lower investor confidence and push these Japanese yields higher. As you can see right here, the 30-year pushing itself up to 3.627%. Besant was asked about if the Treasury is going to be doing this, and he basically said yes without saying yes. Japan's prime minister was asked about this yesterday, if the U.S. and Japan were working together to stabilize the currency when it comes to USD over JPY. She basically said yes without saying yes. They don't want to say that they're doing this, but they kind of have to do this. And the reason they have to do this is because there is such a lack of faith within the US Treasury and the Japanese treasuries that if the Japanese currency doesn't start appreciating at least a bit against the US dollar, you might have some broader issues in the overall credit markets. Now, a weak Japanese yen is good for the yen carry trade, but it can't get so weak to the point where people just don't want to invest in it anymore. So it makes sense why the United States looks like they want to get involved. We have not officially gotten confirmation they're getting involved, but it seems inevitable that if Treasury demand continues to be as ugly as it is across the world, then that's going to be good for Japan. Now, Japan could have artificially done this by raising their rates. They chose not to raise rates last week. They kept it at 0.75%. I think it's because they knew that if they had introduced an increase of rates, that would create a little bit too much volatility into the system. You would have the yen carry trade really blow up in front of a lot of people's faces, especially when they weren't expected to raise rates. So this way, the US government can kind of systematically help stabilize the yen. Now, if the yen were to drop dramatically from like 153 to 140, 145 against the USD, that probably would create a little bit of a flash crash in equity prices. Now, maybe it's anticipated, so that's not going to happen, but that's exactly what happened during the yen carry trade. That's an immediate buy the dip. If we get a stock market 2-3% down day because of the US government trying to pump up the yen, that's overall a good thing long-term, even if it's ugly short-term. So it's one thing to watch out for, and I think we'll know if it happens. Obviously, we'll see if the yen appreciates against the dollar, and it'll be obvious. But as of now, that is a rumor that might end up taking place over the next 2 weeks. Macro charts. Okay, so a couple things that I want to show before we get into the market open. First of all, S&P 500 companies continue to have a really good earnings. As you can see right here from Bank of America, 64 companies have reported. 70% have beat on EPS. 67%, of course, 67 have beat on revenue, and 53% have beat on EPS and revenue. So once again, you're not really seeing a horrible Q4 earnings yet. The big tech companies are going to be reporting this week. There's going to be a lot of companies reporting this week outside of big tech as well. And if they continue to beat and raise the way they have, as you can see right here, these are all the companies that are reporting. I think that's going to be good for the broader ecosystem of the market. Microsoft, Meta, Tesla, ASML, Texas Instruments, United Healthcare. You have UPS, incredible company. That's going to be reporting on Tuesday, actually tomorrow morning. So that's one that I think we should all look out for, as the delivery of packages is an incredibly important, vital part of the global economy. Comcast, Whirlpool, Blackstone, Lam Research, Caterpillar, SAP, SanDisk, big memory name. So SoFi on Friday, that's a big one as well. You have a lot of companies that are reporting this week as we officially get into earnings, and this stuff is definitely going to matter. Another chart that I thought was interesting. Take a look at this from 2011. If you take a look at the return of the S&P 500, which has been over a decade now, 27% of that return has been driven by buybacks. I thought this was pretty incredible. So you have dividends, you have EPS, you have PE multiple expansion, and then you have buybacks. Almost 30% of the entire S&P 500's return over the past decade has been because companies have bought back their stock, which kind of proves how much of a Ponzi the market is, quite frankly. It's just companies with excess, money just buying back their own stock. But it's also important because if they didn't buy back their stock, I wonder where the S&P 500 would be. So one of the things to remember is that when we enter the no buyback period, which I think is now, right? Yeah, during earnings, you can't buy back your stock. That's when, you might see a little bit more of a dip. And once we get out of that, you tend to see a little bit more of a natural recovery from 401ks, retirement flows, passive ETFs, and then obviously companies buying back their own stock as well. 4 SaaS stocks to buy into Q4 earnings, as per Morgan Stanley: ServiceNow, HubSpot, KVYO, which I don't even know what ticker that is. KVYO is Klaviyo. Oh, this is an e-commerce platform, right? I think that's down 12% year to date. And then Zeta. So Morgan Stanley says, in terms of the depth of SaaS, Wall Street Journal did a really good piece this weekend talking about why SaaS stocks have been forgotten. These are the 4 names to buy into earnings. I thought it was interesting they put Zeta on that list. I mean, Zeta is one of the lesser known SaaS names, but the fact that they said, hey, we think Zeta is a buy before earnings does make me think that Zeta has some pretty good room to run, especially as they put up the first quarter of GAAP profitability. for the market as well. Another chart by Goldman Sachs I thought was pretty interesting. The leverage in margin accounts has considerably grown since April of 2025. You now have around 43% of all brokerage accounts using leverage, $1.4 trillion in total. So you are seeing more and more people opt into using margin and leverage to exacerbate their gains. In China, we looked at a couple charts last week. Over $300 billion is now being allocated into margin accounts, which is much smaller than what the United States FINRA margin is looking at 1.4 trillion. But you have people across the entire world, including retail investors, saying, hey, margin is something that we are interested in as we want to get more exposure to the overall market. Another chart that I thought was interesting, January has been down 3 in a row, up 3 in a row, down 3 in a row, up 3 in a row, down 3 in a row, and now up 3 in a row over the past 15 years. There's a week to go in January, but this streak could end with 4 in a row higher. If we end red, that would continue the streak of up 3, down 3, up 3, down 3 over the past 15 years. If we end green, it would be 4 Januaries in a row, which hasn't happened since 2008. So kind of an interesting fun fact right there, but it would be surprising to see January actually end green for the S&P. Again, the S&P, it's done okay. 1% is not horrible this year, but it's just not compared to the rest of the world. We looked at this chart yesterday, 6.5% year to date. The average country is up. Peru, South Korea, Colombia, Brazil, Chile, Turkey, South Africa, Mexico, Taiwan, absolutely dominating the world index. India is at the lowest at down 5%, and then the United States at 1.1%. So far in January, you've seen a lot of the countries get more of a benefit than the United States. All right, we got 3 minutes until the market opens. Let's do the red or green poll in the chat, see what people are thinking. We are basically flat in the pre-markets outside of the memory names, rare earth names, and commodities. Again, I will have a lot of research being published soon on copper. I see people saying, is it too late to buy copper? I bought COPX, which is the copper ETF, literally on Friday. I already had a small position. I increased the position. And based on the research that I'm doing, I'm trying to figure out how big of a position I want it to be. The research that I'm seeing, dude, it's very conclusive that there is going to be a copper shortage. And you don't have to expect massive gains today, but if you really do have like a 3-4 year horizon on it, time horizon, copper should be a decent asset that outperforms pretty well. And it just hasn't run like silver and gold. My fear is that if silver and gold top, it doesn't matter. Like if the S&P tops, it doesn't matter if there's a stock that's super undervalued in the broader market. It's going to get hit if the S&P takes a 10% hit like this. So if silver takes a 10%, 20% hit, I think copper, no matter how much the bull case you have on it, is going to get hit. So I feel like position sizing becomes the tiebreaker in terms of being able to protect yourself or hedge yourself. And you have to compare it to silver and gold, even if it is an asset that should be independently treated from silver and gold based on the research. Because at the end of the day, silver and gold are $40 trillion of the commodities market. Gold at 35 trillion, silver at 5 trillion. And so I don't think that could be fully denied. Obviously, if you're not a commodities investor, which I'm not a commodities investor, I'm trying to learn about it, get a lot more interested in it and see what it looks like. The stock market probably is a better bet in finding undervalued companies, but I do think it's worth at least putting out the research, and then people can make the decision on if they think the asset is worth investing in. Nvidia right there, that's down 0.27%. S&P 500 trying to go green as we get into the open. AppLovin got an upgrade today to $700. That short report still holding them down at 530. Nebius getting a pump as well based on the Coreweave. $2 billion. Wow, Nebius right there up 4%. Coreweave I still think at 10%. $2 billion Nvidia is investing. 102 on Coreweave, 9.7% on that. SoFi has been a disaster over the past month. I don't know why the market hates this. I guess financials are down in general, so SoFi is getting hit, but they do have earnings coming up, and I think $29.50 on earnings is not crazy, if not $30. So that'll be a big earnings on Friday. Adobe, that's up 0.24%. And then we're going to see how the market interprets these big tech earnings as they get ready to get put up on Wednesday. All right, here we go. 20 seconds. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Hopefully, everyone had a great weekend. Once again, I am here to deliver the news every morning. Thank you all for being here and receiving the news from me every morning. Monday, January 26, 9:30 a.m., the stock market is now open. right, wake your ass up. Let's get into it. Meta, she's going for 670. She's going for 670. Could you imagine seeing a 7-figure on her? 7 hundo for the first time since July. It would be quite incredible if we see that. 667 on Meta. Maybe we get to that 670 level. COPEX, that's up 5%. Copper continues to rally. USAR, 28%, 31.79. Look at that. As soon as we get into the open. Skywater Technologies, that's up 8%. They're getting bought out. S&P 500 at 689. Nvidia about to go green, 187.60. That's about 8 cents away from touching 188. Zeta, that's down about 2%, 21.35. Iren is down 1.5%. AppLovin at 544. Coreweave, 105, 13% on the day. The market is bidding it up. There you go. Nvidia investing $2 billion into Coreweave, and that is getting some more momentum. AMD at 255, Bitcoin at 87,480, Meta just below 667. Uber got an upgrade today, barely moving, 82.54. The upgrade was to $150. Nothing too crazy right there. Robinhood, are we still at 105? We are at 105.50. That's down 2% as the market opens. Palantir, 168. That did hit 172 on Friday. That's down about 1% since then. Amcor, that's flat. Broadcom, I don't know why Broadcom is getting hit as much as it's getting hit. You would think 325, 330 was enough pain. I guess it's not. Broadcom right there, 319. Disney, that's down. Nancy Pelosi did sell a bunch of Disney. OSS, lowest level we've seen in a while. Again, this thing gets below $9. It gets a lot more interesting. OSS right there, down about 4.5% of the day. SanDisk, that's down 2%. What about Micron, which hit 415 last week? Micron back to 389. All right, 412 to 389. So that one round tripping that move to 400. We'll see if buyers step in for another run at $400. PayPal's up a little bit. CrowdStrike's up a little bit. Where is silver and gold? Gold is at 5,078. Silver, my goodness, $110 once again in the U.S. markets. 99.68 right there on SLV. Spot price basically at 109.50. That's up 7.2%. Absolutely incredible. Nebius, are we over 100? Nebius moving with Coreweave, very close to over 100. It was there for a second, 99.20. That's up 4.3% on the day. Iren not moving with Nebius and Coreweave, which is kind of weird. Iren actually red. Last week, Iren was up and then Nebius was down. So kind of diverging from there. COPEX continues to rally 6.45%. That one's getting a ton of love as well as that gets more momentum. USAR, that's up 27%. IONQ, which acquired Skywater Technology, that's up 5%. MP, that's up another 1.8%. Zeta, back to 21.50. Shopify, I have not really done enough of my DD on Shopify, but I am getting a lot more interested given that it's trading at 7-month lows. 137.35 on Shopify. That's down about 0.5%. Still a SaaS name that continues to not really get a lot of love. T1 Energy down 7%. Amazon's up a little bit. EOSE down 3%. Bloom Energy down below 140. 4%, and then VG down 4%. All your energy names, T1, VG, BE, and EOSC getting hit on the day. Oracle, that's up at 180. That was at 170 last week. Tesla, 442. Tesla goes red. Tesla goes red. Cloudflare, that's up 7%. That's nice. I don't think they had earnings today, so that's weird. This is a relatively important SaaS name. So let's see if there's a headline for that, for why that's up. But you got Cloudflare, that's up. SoFi, are we breaking through 26? 26.12, that's up 1%, which is nice. And then did Nvidia go green? Nvidia did go green, 187.75 as well. Why would you buy COPEX instead of just a copper ETF? You could also buy a copper ETF as well. The miners, one could argue, are a bit more undervalued compared to the spot price of copper, given some of the dynamics between the miners. So, I mean, again, just getting exposure to me is important, but COPEX, I think, is one of the easier ways to get exposure to the miners. The thing about, and again, I'll put this in all the research that comes out, to build a copper mine takes almost 15 years. It is not easy. And part of the research is suggesting that with all this data center build out and electric grid build out, we're using a lot more copper than the mines can support. And it's very hard to build mines. It's very time consuming. So there is an argument right there for why the demand for the miners at that point is actually a bit more greater than the demand for the spot price of copper in and of itself. And so that's why I think the miners have a little bit more alpha. Coreweave right there, 104. That's up 12%. Yeah, same dynamic with the silver miners as well. Exactly. It's just silver's, already made a pretty massive run. Uber right there, 83.20. That's up 1%. Meta, 661. S&P, 691. Okay. Let's see if 7,000 is on the way. Probably not today, but it would be nice if we can get there by the end of the week if big tech helps out. AppLovin, that's up 4% on the day. How about Oscar? That stock is down 1.4%. Lemonade had a great week last week with Tesla. That's down 4% as well. Elon mentioned them publicly at Davos. Hoodie is at 107. Robinhood flips green. APLD, that's up 7%. Is that a new all-time high for Applied Digital? Yeah, that is. Why is Applied Digital hitting all-time highs? I don't know. Probably because Nvidia owns 4% of them, or they comprise 4% of Nvidia's portfolio. And if Nvidia just invested in Coreweave, maybe the street's thinking that Nvidia might make an investment into Applied Digital. Maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but that could be the argument. Nvidia right there, 188.50, as that's green as well. What was the gold ETF you mentioned last week? GLD. It's the most basic common gold ETF. I think BlackRock. It might not be BlackRock, but this is the easiest way to get access to the spot price of gold without having to buy gold. GLD, that is the ETF. That one's up another 2% right here. 5,060 an ounce on gold. UAMY, that stock up about 2% right here. Let's check on USAR again. 1.6 billion by the US government, 26% on the day, 31.23. As that one continues to go green. Does the weakening of the dollar help grab at international stocks? Yeah, actually, I mean, technically the weakening of the dollar does help grab Mercado Libre, Nubank, etc. Just in terms of how they report their earnings, a weaker dollar tends to help them. Now, again, I think those companies, they're still companies at the end of the day. They need to put up free cash flow, net income, earnings, etc. They need to have actual catalysts that get shareholders excited. But the headwind of the dollar being super strong and that reducing their growth rates because of the foreign currency exchange, that seems to not be as big of an issue given the dollar has come down. It was an issue when the Dixie was at 115 back in January of 2025, but ultimately, I don't think that's the catalyst for international stocks. It could help them, but international stocks need to actually grow because at the end of the day, they are companies. SoFi right there, 26.17, and then Cloudflare, that's up 8.4%. Yes, GLD is BlackRock. Okay, so GLD and SLV, I believe, is also BlackRock. So those assets continue to be high. Let me check the AUM for SLV and GLD. So iShares Silver Trust AUM is 51 billion. That has come into that. GLD AUM is 172 billion. So you've got a lot of money that are trying to get exposure to these spot prices without buying the physical assets via these ETFs. Jensen's live on CNBC. Is he actually? Is he live today? Jensen. Yeah, Jensen's live. What? Looks like he's live from a hotel room. Okay. Let's get to Jensen and Coreweave. There you go. He probably is in China right now. So there you go. Jensen and the Coreweave CEO talking about this investment.
Go to you first. There are people who think, wait.
And to build out pre-training capability, post-training capability, as well as inference capability. And so we're seeing extraordinary demand from them. But one of the big events that happened in the last year is the significant investments into the next layer of AI, which ultimately is the most important AI applications. This is AI applications for healthcare, for manufacturing, for entertainment, for media, so many financial services, software, engineering, so many different applications are being started. And the last couple of years, the funding into AI natives companies are the largest in venture capital history. And all these steps need infrastructure, and which leads us to the incredible partner that we have with Coreweave. And we're making a significant investment in them. Incredibly happy that they're going to sign up and dedicate themselves to our architecture for the next 5 gigawatts and many years to come. And the thing that is happening here is that, as you know, Coreweave has used NVIDIA's architecture for GPU computing as well as networking since their founding. But they're also now going to add NVIDIA's CPU as well as our storage platform based on Bluefield. So our CPU is Vera. It's completely revolutionary. We're going to tell everybody more about it. So many companies are now signing up to use Vera all by itself because it's such an incredible CPU. And then also our new Bluefield storage platform, which is going to be really important for an agentic AI so that it can have memory and large context. And so this is a really significant partnership, and I'm really excited to support Coreweave.
All right, I'm thrilled that Michael's here too. When we talk about that, just one other thing, Jensen, you are in East Asia, you're in China, and I wanted to know, what are the possibilities that you can talk about the big orders that you might have in China, whether they should be included in the models of analysts, and what is the overall sense of the idea that your chips can be used by ByteDance, by Alibaba, by TikTok, all of which, as we understand, need them, want to partner with you?
Well, I'm here to celebrate Chinese New Year with my employees. I'm visiting 4 different sites, and while here, I have the opportunity to meet with some members of the Chinese government, and of course, our customers and partners here. We're looking forward to the H200 licenses being finalized, and we're looking forward to the Chinese government contemplating how they would like to allow us back into this market. And but the thing that is consistent is that the demand for H200s and the demand for Nvidia stacks are really, really significant here. And the reason for that is the same as what we're experiencing in the West, which is these AI systems are racing towards the frontier, and also the number of applications that are being built on top of these AI models is really going through the roof. So demand is really strong.
All right, so Michael, it's great to have you.
And you asked a question, and Mike, excuse me, sorry about that, Jim. You asked a question that's really important. All of China's business and future potential business are not in our forecast, not in our guidance. And so I would love for everybody just to...
Big point by Jensen. He's trying to get the street to realize, hey, you think we're going to put up XYZ amount of revenue, but if we get this China revenue, you're going to be wrong. We're going to beat that. So he's trying to get people to realize we are going to beat your estimates, which means our stock price is probably too low for the estimates that you have.
Keep it off our guidance, and it'll just be a great bonus when things get sorted out. And I've got a fair amount of confidence that things will sort out. But until then, we ought to just keep it off our guidance, and it'll just be a great bonus for everybody to enjoy.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm so glad to have Michael here, too. Michael, it's a very big deal. I know that you already had it.
When you think about what our company is doing, when you think about the partnership that we're extending with NVIDIA here, it really is about how are we going to accelerate the build of this infrastructure to meet that demand, right? It's coming from across the economy. It's coming from governments. It's coming from across the globe. And that is a significant and sustained push to be able to ensure that we can move as quickly as we can to be able to deliver the infrastructure to the market. And this deal right here does really 3 things, right? It does an alignment around the physical infrastructure so that we're able to build an additional 5 gigawatts or more as we go forward. It gives us a wonderful alignment with NVIDIA on the software side. You know, I've come in here again and again and kept telling you that Coreweave does something different on the software and execution side. And this is just a tremendous validation for us that is in fact how it works in terms of delivering the best solution to the market. You bring together the best infrastructure, you bring with the best software and the best operations, and you deliver the best product to the consumers of this. And that's what this partnership really represents.
Will this be something where any customer other than a hyperscaler can say, you know what, I got to get these chips. The hyperscalers would take them all otherwise. Is this a place for people to go who want very much NVIDIA and don't know what to do?
Yeah, look, this kind of drives our business in a lot of ways. And it allows us to touch a lot of infrastructure, on-prem infrastructure that companies want to build, sovereign cloud, and it allows us to deliver our software solution to those consumers. And that is a market that we haven't really been able to open up. You know, ordinarily we build within our own data center. Now we're going to be able to build within our own data center, and we're also adding the ability to deliver software so other people can use our solution for their builds. And that's a huge market for us, and it will be very important to us over time.
And it's your feeling that that is going to differentiate you in the marketplace in terms of the offerings that are out there?
Yeah, so
why?
So we have our own infrastructure. We build it, we deliver it to the market, and we do the best job. And in terms of building that solution, we will be able to license our software to others who want to deliver really high quality infrastructure. And we believe that that's a great business for us to be in parallel with our infrastructure builds that are going to occur within the additional 5 gigawatts that we're adding to the backlog of 2.9 that we talked about at our last earnings.
The gating issues that we talk about sometimes, the friction, the financing, the permitting, the labor, the energy, has there been any evolution of those things? Has one rocketed to the top, for example?
So, you know, the way that this market works is that you kind of move through the critical path of resistance. And so, you know, the market has identified again and again, hey, you know, right now access to the GPUs is the limiting factor, and then that clears, and access to energy is the factor, and then, you know, we work through that issue, and then we kind of, you know, access to memory is going to be an issue as we go forward. All of those things occur. That debate will continue for the foreseeable future as the world tries to scale into this global computing infrastructure that's required.
Jensen, I'd love to come to you. It's David. Jim asked Mike about the circularity question, but I'd love to come to you on it as well. This idea that you basically are financing your own demand. How do you respond to that potential criticism?
Important question.
Well, we're trying to build the AI ecosystem. AI is a 5-layer cake. Starts with energy on the lowest level, then chips, then infrastructure. This is where Coreweave is. And then the AI models, there's open source models. There's, of course, all of the premium AI labs models. And then the layer on top of that are the AI applications that are associated with the different industries and applications. And you could see us investing across that entire 5-layer cake of AI. And the reason for that is, of course, we're really enthusiastic about the companies there. They're once-in-a-generation companies being built, and we want to support and be deeply engaged with every single layer of that ecosystem. Now, the thing that to remember is we've invested $2 billion in the Coreweave, but recognize that the amount of funding that needs to be raised yet to support that 5 gigawatts is really quite significant. We're investing a small percentage of the amount that ultimately has to go and be provided in order to be raised in order to provide this infrastructure. This goes along, this is exactly the same with XAI, and we're delighted to invest in them, delighted to invest in Anthropic, delighted to invest in OpenAI. But whatever we decide to invest is a small percentage, very small percentage of the overall amount of infrastructure capital they're going to have to raise.
Yeah, and we talk about that all the time. The numbers are truly just staggering, almost hard to imagine, not to mention the power that's got to be built. You mentioned OpenAI, Jensen. We were talking on set prior to your joining us. You know, I think it was back in late September when there were the first reports about $100 billion potential Nvidia investment in OpenAI. We haven't seen it finalized yet. Is that something that is still going to happen?
Well, we said that we would invest $1 billion, $10 billion for each gigawatt that they would have to go raise. So they have to raise a significant amount in addition to what we decide to invest in them. Now, as you know, we invest in exchange for equity. I think it's a once-in-a-generation company. It's a fantastic investment. I wish we would invest it earlier and more significantly. The work that they're doing is incredible. This is going to be a consequential company and a very large company. And so we're delighted to invest in them. But whatever we decide to invest in them is a small percentage of what they ultimately raise. You know, we're in the largest.
Jensen, little sidestep in that question about OpenAI right there. Again, sentiment shifting a little on OpenAI. It's not like he's completely dismissing them, but he's not explicitly saying, hey, yeah, we're super excited to invest in them.
Infrastructure build out in human history. And AI is revolutionary technology. But because of the nature of AI, it needs infrastructure to process and generate intelligence in real time. You can't do this in advance. You can't pre-record intelligence. You can't pre-record it like a book. You have to generate the intelligence in real time. And so you need computational infrastructure for this. And because intelligence is fundamentally necessary for every application in every industry, we're seeing this build out across every country, as Mike was saying earlier. And so So this is going to be a substantial infrastructure build out, and we're just in the beginning part of that.
Yeah, no doubt. Just to come back to OpenAI, so your investment takes place over a long period of time, given they meet certain thresholds in terms of the build out that they've committed to. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, they're giving us the opportunity. They're giving us the opportunity to invest as they build out, and for each one of the build out, we'll consider the investment, and I expect that it's going to be a great opportunity. And I look.
I mean, dude, even that terminology for each one of the build outs will consider the investment. I mean, Jensen's over here throwing $2 billion at Coreweave like it's nothing, and he's talking about considering to invest in OpenAI. It feels a little fishy. It just feels like there's something where they have a little bit more hesitation than not to put more money into OpenAI.
For to invest.
I see.
So, Michael, a couple things are concerning to me. You would best person to be able to answer it.
That you're seeing and the demand signals that are moving through the market. They're overwhelming parts of the market that there was an assumption would be okay and have enough supply to handle. And when I think about that, I kind of come back to our core business, which is being driven and informed by the demand signals that the largest consumers of this infrastructure are driving through us. They come to us to buy massive quantities of infrastructure. And so I look at this and I think that you're in a super cycle. You're going to be buying and building across the computing space. There are going to be opportunities to scale this business broadly, the AI infrastructure business, within the domestic U.S., around the world, all of which are going to consume GPUs. They're going to consume networking. They're going to consume optics. They're going to consume CPU. They're going to consume memory. Yeah. And that is that is a consequence of, as Jensen says, the largest build out in human history.
Michael, when your company went public, I can remember us having a conversation around customer concentration.
Yep.
Microsoft, I believe, was the name that the preponderance of sales were there. Where do you guys stand now? And how does a deal like this, if in any way, help you sort of increase the mix, so to speak?
Yeah, so two things, right? One is at my last earnings, I said that, there is no customer that represents more than, I think, 32% of our backlog. And so we have made it a priority. It was a stated priority, and we have done an excellent job as a company executing on diversifying our backlog as we onboard new great clients like Meta, like Nvidia, like OpenAI, right across the board. And so that's been wonderful. The other thing that I've always said is that when you're dealing with contracts and infrastructure at this size and scale, the way that you diversify is through growth, right? You need to get larger because you need to bring on new clients that are huge consumers of compute in order to bring down concentration. And this deal allows us to accelerate our build, which will lead to continued diversification and reducing dependency on any particular client as we scale into this additional data center capacity.
Okay, Jensen, I wanted to ask you, we've got GTC coming up. It's going to be so exciting, as it always is. And I was hoping, I saw that you said this weekend that Anthropic, I hope people are using it to develop software. I'll develop software. You're developing it. We can all do it. Can you give us a sense of what's going to happen to just make it so that Vera Rubin takes maybe a step function when you combine it with Anthropic, that people just are going to be blown away? I don't think people understand what lays ahead.
Yeah, I think the last year, the models made gigantic progress, and all of the labs made incredible progress with agentic AI systems. And these AIs could now reason, they could plan, and they could use tools. They have memory, and the capabilities are extraordinary, which is the reason why the layer above them is really taken off. These are application companies that ultimately are going to bring productivity and new capability to the different verticals and different industries. And this is ultimately the layer that has to take off and is taken off. In the last couple of years, we've seen the largest venture funding into the application layer of AI. And it's also the largest VC funding years in history. And so it's great to see everybody's so excited about the capability of these AI models. One of the that I'm going to mention is that, NVIDIA's supply chain is the largest in the world with respect to AI. And we've had the benefit of ramping and scaling and planning our supply chain for the last couple of years. And we've been looking forward to the gigantic build out of this year and the next several years. And so we've had the benefit of planning and support and great support from the entire ecosystem, from TSMC's wafers and CoWoS and packaging, from Amkor and Spill and all of our memory vendors. We're the only AI company in the world that works with every single vendor, every single memory maker in the world. And so we have incredible support from all of them. So we're looking forward to a giant scale out this year.
Jensen, that kind of leads me to my question. Coming out of Davos, I'm sure you were there. We're hearing all these conversations about sea changes in global alliances and trade relationships. The build out, as you think of it, is it immune from any volatility that comes as a result of that?
Well, we're in the beginning of the AI infrastructure build out, and the demand is just extraordinary. As I mentioned earlier, the first part of the demand is the race to the next frontier. And these agentic systems are learning how to reason and solve problems and use tools. And you're going to see some extraordinary capabilities this coming year. In the next several months, the models that are going to be released are going to be extraordinary. But the thing that is really amazing are all of the startups that are being built on top of these AI model companies. These applications ultimately takes advantage of the AI models that are being built, in addition to proprietary models that they're creating or open models that are being fine-tuned. And so we're seeing just a large number of AI native companies that are being founded. And all of these companies, whether it's the frontier AI labs or the AI native startups, they all need infrastructure, which is the reason why we're working so closely with Coreweave so that we can align our engineering, align our operations, and enable them to scale as quickly as possible so we can go after that demand. Yeah, the demand is just extraordinary.
Well, thank you, Jensen. Thank you, Michael, for coming on the
Hell of an endorsement from Jensen on Coreweave, man. Absolutely. I mean, I don't think any of the neo clouds have got an endorsement like that from the epicenter of AI, which is Nvidia and their CEO. Coreweave, right, they're up 13%. Basically, Jensen saying this super cycle of a build out is not slowing down. It's only increasing. What Anthropic released over the weekend, which some people might have seen. If you haven't, I'll pull it up right here. First of all, 2 weeks ago, they introduced Claude Cowork, which was seen as kind of like the death of SaaS. Not really, but in a way, it was just replacing a lot of the traditional SaaS tools that people realize now can be done with AI. And then the Wall Street Journal put out this article over the weekend. Claude is taking the AI world by storm, and even non-nerds are blown away. They released Claude for Excel yesterday. And it's pretty incredible. I'm not the biggest Excel person, but for those that are in Excel, obviously, you know how incredibly important and vital the tool is. Now, if you can prompt Excel to create pivot tables without you having to know how to create a pivot table, that's a big deal. It's a very, very big deal. Look, this is someone else who just showed how Cowork from Anthropic organized 6 months of receipts into a categorized spreadsheet with monthly breakdowns. Integrating with Excel, but there's also some other videos of it doing more explicit functions on Excel. I mean, this is stuff where you have other traditional SaaS tools to be able to do, if not paying some VA in the Philippines relatively cheap rates per hour, but nonetheless, you are still paying for the job to be done when it comes to data management, organization, et cetera. If all of this can happen via AI, I mean, this gets very exciting. And it obviously leads to probably more demand. Now, the most important thing about this, and the reason I think Claude is the epicenter of how this is playing out, is if you take a look at H100 rental prices for Nvidia, they fell to their lowest level in a year in November of 2025. Then something ended up coming out into the AI market, which was called Claude 4.5 Opus. And as you can see, since then, those rental prices have increased, meaning there's probably just a lot more demand and a lot more people renting out these H100s in order to be able to get access to these brand new models. So, I mean, this seems really bullish for the broader AI ecosystem. I think that's why Jensen is also making this $2 billion investment into Coreweave. At the end of the day, Coreweave is licensing out these GPUs to so many other companies that can't directly buy them from NVIDIA because they don't have access to the supply chain of NVIDIA, or they're just not like a core customer NVIDIA would sell to. The only part that was weird about that interview was, once again, his shakiness on acknowledging OpenAI. I mean, he said the basic cookie cutter things about how we like OpenAI, we think they're an important part of the system. But then at the end, he says we would consider investing in them if they start to build out their infrastructure, which I think someone said in the chat right here, maybe he's trying to avoid the Zuck's ruthless spending narrative, where Zuck's was throwing around money everywhere. And obviously the stock got hit based on that narrative to an extent. Maybe, Jensen's trying to be very specific with the money they're allocating, why they bought Grok for 20 billion, why they're putting another 2 billion into Coreweave, where the exact ROI is going to be. And then if the opportunity to invest in OpenAI makes sense, then they'll do it. If not, then they reserve the right not to. Now, again, OpenAI has almost 1 billion users. Obviously, it's hard to imagine they're going to fail. But if Google starts winning in terms of the consumer, which Gemini is ramping up aggressively, and Coreweave is actually going down month over month in terms of, not Coreweave, OpenAI is going down month over month in terms of web traffic, and the enterprise is overtaken by Anthropic, OpenAI is going to win, but it might not win to the level where people are saying it's a $10 trillion company. And if that doesn't happen, then I don't know if they can justify spending $1.5 trillion on all these build-outs. So yeah, bullish Anthropic. And for all of us that don't have private Anthropic shares, there's a really easy way to get some exposure. It's called Amazon, which owns about 20% of Anthropic. So I know Amazon's down today, kind of been stuck around this 230 range, but once Anthropic goes public and Amazon shows like a $20, $30 billion unrealized gain on the balance sheet, that might be something that the market gets excited about. Wow, Dixie, did it just lose 97? It's very close to losing 97. That is incredible. The dollar, once again, look, it can't get too weak. It can get weaker than this. I don't know if it can get into the low 90s, maybe around 95. The Fed might step in, or at least Trump might start saying stuff to pump it back up. But there you go, as that one continues to decline down another 0.5% on the day. Microsoft, are we green? MSFT, that is, yep, 470 on Microsoft. She's pushing higher. S&P 500 still trying to go green as well. Meta, did we get 670? We did not. 667, still holding on that level. I don't know why CleanSpark's down 9%. That's weird, given it also is a NeoCloud at this point. Hood with the green candle. That's nice as well. Yeah, I see zero headline on CleanSpark. No, nothing. I don't see anything on CleanSpark. CleanSpark, that's down on the day, 8%. Silver still at 110. Treasury cancels contracts with Booz Allen Hamilton. Oh boy, let's look at that stock. They are down 5%. That's actually super bullish for a company we all know called Palantir. Palantir right there going green, 170. Booz Allen Hamilton going down 4%. I mean, Trump's administration has said that they're going to stop giving out contracts to a lot of these consultants that aren't really getting the job done. That was kind of the whole point of Doge as well. They missed on earnings, but they were up 5% on Friday. But it looks like the Treasury putting out a statement right here saying they are now canceling certain contracts with Booz Allen. I mean, it makes sense. Like, a lot of these contracts can be done via technology and software. And although Booz Allen Hamilton works with technology, they're not necessarily a tech company. Feels like that can be replaced pretty easily. But MP Materials, it was up 0.7. Now it's down 7. Wow. Look at that. MP Materials, 65.17. What about USAR? Did that one get dumped? Not dumped, but it's down from 34. Still up 17% on the day. But if you bought in the mid-30s, you're not happy right now. USAR right there at 29. The other rare earth names getting hit. CRML, that one also 8% down. Wow. This is the scary part about this market. This is the scary part. Some of these names like metals or memory or commodities, I mean, they can have an easy 8% down day. And can anyone blame them? No. I mean, CRML is up 50% over the past 2 weeks. It's not crazy that one's taking a bit of a hit right there. CleanSpark down 7%, Meta 665, Microsoft 470, Coreweave 104.36. Coreweave as well getting a hit from 108. Where is our buddy Intel? 43.08. That's down 4%. That's why I'm happy with the Max 7. Yeah, the Max 7 definitely don't have the level of stress that one would have in these other names. But, you know, they also have not shown the level of alpha that exists in some of those other names. Robinhood right there, 107.47. That's up 0.45%. TTD, is that one down as well? Again, TTD, that's down 4%. This one absolutely obliterated since February of last. February last year, the stock was $120. I mean, this one's got it hit pretty bad. And then Zeta, this one, 21.32. That one's also down 2%. All right, that's how we opened up this market. AMD as well going red. Bitcoin actually getting a little bit of a bid, 88,000. COPEX still up 6%. IONQ up 3%. S&P 692. S&P, let's look at the heat map. What's leading it today? Might be a little bit of tech. Broadcom actually a nice recovery. I think it was almost below 315. Now it's at 325. Yeah, I guess it's tech. Google, Apple, Microsoft, Broadcom, Amazon. Tesla's down. Broadcom's up. Micron, AMD, and Intel all again down. Intel looks more interesting to me at 35, but to be honest, after a 17% drawdown, you know, maybe the bottom is in. It's hard to say fundamentally, but if they were to drop to 35, I think that would get a lot more exciting. Walmart's up, financials are up, healthcare is up, AppLovin 4%. Zoom's up 4% today. Why is Zoom up? What the hell did Zoom do? This stock never goes up. It stays flat. Zoom. You know, I still pay for Zoom. Like, it's still the best video meeting software on the planet. Dude, someone was buying a lot of calls for Zoom. The 110 strike for March 20th. I wonder what they know about this one. All right, Zoom getting some love. I just had a Zoom meeting. Yeah, I have like a Zoom meeting every day. Zoom is, I don't know, I've been using it for like the past 5 years now, but the stock has obviously not been able to show a lot of growth. USAR is still up 17%. We got some data from JP Morgan on, or Goldman Sachs on the FOMC. So pretty much saying what we talked about this morning. January FOMC meeting is likely to be uneventful with no change to the Fed funds rate, only minor changes to the statement and few hints about the future policy path. Chair Powell is likely to emphasize that the FOMC has just delivered 3 cuts that should help stabilize the labor market and is well positioned. We have penciled in the next 25 basis point cut in June, followed by a final cut in September. So Goldman Sachs is thinking we get 2 cuts. We don't get the first cut for another 6 months, which Trump will not be happy about, but not that crazy for them to predict that. And then the next cut in September. Again, the labor market's not in a horrible spot, so I understand why the Fed might not think we need to cut rates, but they also might want to cut rates before the labor market gets in a horrible spot. It's just none of the data is necessarily showing it to be as bad. Amazon is getting ready to lay off another 15,000 people starting next month, as per Reuters. Rubrik, that's up 3%, another software name that got hit last week. 3.2% there on the day. Why are rare earths falling right now? To be honest, why were they going up like crazy, right? I mean, I understand USAR going up because it got a massive investment. But even then, the others following that, it was probably purely momentum. And it looks like they're taking a breather now. But then again, like they could be up the next day if Trump says something about rare earths. So these are names where you just got to be ready to deal with the volatility up or down. And, you know, if you DCA over time and rare earths continue to be an important theme, they should be up in the long term. Rocket Lab right there, 85. This one got all the way back to 94 on Friday. Still holding the 80s, which is a very strong multiple for Rocket Lab, but it's not breaking through the 90s today. ASTS back to 108 from 120 on Friday as well. Duolingo, is that one still getting hit? Duolingo, yep, 4% down on Mr. Duolingo. Apple 253. Apple getting a pump right here makes sense. They're going to have a good quarter. It's going to be one of the best revenue growth quarters and EPS growth quarters in the past 4 years. I was surprised they got sold off yesterday, especially with the Gemini partnership coming up. Looks like market's running into Apple with some safety. Nvidia just released Nvidia Earth 2 family of open models, the first fully open AI accelerated weather stack. Okay, so looks like we've got some new AI models. We are proud to announce NVIDIA Earth 2 family of open models, first open accelerated AI weather stack as their latest model. You know, this actually makes sense because if you're talking about simulating data and creating synthetic data, being able to simulate what weather patterns will look like, and then how certain geographies not only will react to that, but obviously in the future, how physical AI will be impacted that, whether it's cars, robots, etc. That stuff feels like it makes more sense inside of the Cosmos platform in general. Yeah, let's go to the stock draft. Let's see what's going on there. Duolingo decimating me on this freaking draft, dude. We are down 70% on this stupid stock. If we just had something that was like not down 70%, that would help. But we're at 25%. We're in second place. Matt's at 50%. Tanner's at 17. Matt's in first. Steve's at 8. Chris is at 9. Chris was negative a couple months ago. So Chris has started to come back really well. Tanner's getting hit by trade. Everyone has one stinker. Tanner has Trade Desk. He's down 50% on that. I'm down 70 on Duolingo. Steve is down 50% on HIMS and 50% on MicroStrategy. That's what's really hurting him. And then Matt's worst stock is Dutch Bros, down 15. So that's why he's in the lead right here, as that's not fully changing. Well, that's what we got on the stock draft. Stocks that have been traded the most. This is not updated for today, but this was Friday. Yeah, this is Friday's update. Tesla, Intel, Nvidia, AMD, and Microsoft in the options market on Friday were traded in the top 5. Then you have Netflix, Apple, Meta, Amazon, Micron, MicroStrategy, Palantir, Broadcom, Iran, SMCI, GameStop. CEO bought 1 million shares of GameStop. SoFi, Google, Hood, and Oracle. So Intel, Tesla, Nvidia, AMD, and Microsoft ended up getting into those top 5 names from the option market last week. Let's get a little bit of coverage on the precious metals as well. Kind of see how people are thinking of gold and silver.
I think the latter. I think the industrial pro-cyclical trade, just because the expectations for the big mega cap tech stocks are so high. Now, I will say to some extent, because our customers love volume and volatility, has been among the most actives, but not necessarily among the most heavily bought. It's been bought, but not as aggressively as some of the others.
Up another 8+% is the SLV today. I mean, what do you make of this move?
This is parabolic.
By the way, silver just hit 112. Silver just hit 112.
Mania. I don't know that you can call silver a meme stock because it's not the same motivation. But what you're seeing here is this is where the hot money is running into. When you have a parabolic trade, they're extraordinarily unpredictable. So a move of this sort, when I look back across history, this actually in many ways blows away even the Hunt brothers in 1980-ish or so. This is it's bordering on mania in silver. In gold, I would have said it was a little more controlled until recently. I think also a lot of customers are moving out of Bitcoin and into gold and silver, which I think describes some of the relative performance we've seen. It became very easy for what I'm going to call normies to buy Bitcoin when with ETFs and IBIT, et cetera. And a lot of them piled in as it went from, call it 75 to 125. Now that same money is very easy to move out of the Bitcoin ETFs from, not from the 20 or 30-year-old hodlers, but from the 50 and 60-year-old people thinking about retirement. They're moving that into, sort of let's call it the more classic type of hedges of silver and gold. Although silver, I think, is not hedging anything at this point because it's just really.
So does that mean you should buy it?
Parabolic.
Is that a contra? Does that mean you should buy it? Is that sort of a contraindicator?
What I would say with a parabolic move is trade at your own risk, because you can see that the rewards can be fabulous, right? Silver's up, 10% right now, according to the bug on your screen. But on the other hand, if we just want to go back to, let's say, the 30-day moving average, you're talking about a 30 or 40% decline. So these become very treacherous, very unpredictable.
I meant Bitcoin because people are bailing.
Oh, sorry. I get the sense when I see a lot of the moves in Bitcoin that it's actually being propped up a little bit by, sort of the interested parties. I know last week we got some statistics that BMNR and MSTR were among the buyers of Bitcoin and Ethereum. So I do wonder, who's propping that up, because the way it bounced this morning seemed like somebody just stepped in and propped it up. I think right now, if you're trading off of momentum, sure. The problem is, from a normal value point of view, I would say if these were two stocks, that were more comparable, I'd say sure, buy the one that's down and sell the one that's up. But Bitcoin clearly doesn't have the history as a hedge of precious metals. You're not hearing about central banks moving into Bitcoin for their central bank reserves. So I would say that it remains a standalone.
Finally, Steve, Friday night, there were these headlines about inflows into emerging market ETFs, in some cases, the biggest since inception, around 2012. We mentioned the dollar, we mentioned metals. Do you believe there is some kind of sell America trade in place? Is that a real possibility of a European equity buyer's strike, or is this sort of a fabrication of various forms of media?
I'd say that there is a view of let's look elsewhere type of trade, which is not necessarily a sell America trade, but it's, hey, maybe there's this whole big, great wide world out there that offer opportunities. And now that a lot of these other opportunities, whether it's European shares, whether it's emerging markets, et cetera, have caught the momentum bug, people have become big momentum players, and you see a lot of hot money move in. It doesn't take much to move emerging markets as much. It doesn't take much to move some of these precious metals so much. It doesn't take much to move even the Russell 2000 so much. Russell 2000 fits neatly into Nvidia in terms of market cap. So, so I think when you start to get the hot money trade, I don't know that we've seen truly the sell America trade yet, but I do think people have been, and I think wisely so, realizing there are values in the great big wide world out there.
Steve, good stuff. Always good to get your take ahead of a busy week. Talk soon.
The sell America concept is really interesting because we've seen it take place with treasuries and the Dixie getting hit. But what America has that everyone else doesn't have are the tech companies. And if those continue to gain inflows, even though, large caps have not been getting those types of inflows this year to start, I think that keeps America rolling. But in terms of the dollar, you are seeing a little bit of diversification away from that. Here's a chart that I thought was really interesting as well. This is from JP Morgan. They put this out on Friday. JPM said Centrus Energy, LEU, is the fourth most likely stock to be short squeezed. So these are their 20 top names in terms of social media hype stocks. And they have MP, Poet, Lunar, LEU, Intel, Reddit, ASTS, CCJ, Nebius, Planet Labs, Immunity Bio. A lot of people have been talking about that. IBRX, Palantir, AMD, Google, HIMS, ALK, Meta, Rock Lab, Ondas, etc. on the list. And Centrus is the one they think could be the next one to squeeze. LEU right there is up about 0.36%. The short float on USAR also is pretty aggressive. I think, if I'm not wrong, it's above 15%. USAR now up 15% on the day. And so you probably have some shorts potentially covering based on this $1.6 billion announcement. Never mind, 36%. Massive, massive short float on you. Well, it's up 36%. Okay, so it increased 36% from last time. It's 13% of the float. So yeah, about 15% of the float, but the increase is 36% from last week on the short interest on USAR, which also could be contributing to the squeeze. Lemonade short is 30%. That's correct. APLD, I think, is also shorted pretty heavily. HIMS is still shorted like freaking 35% or something. So a lot of these names have made a pretty aggressive move, and part of it could be because of their short float. APLD right there, 32% is their short float. And then where's Rocket Lab short float? We haven't looked at that in a minute. Rocket Lab, 8%. Nothing crazy, but still a decent chunk. Is SoFi still at 10%? SoFi was at 10% for the longest. SoFi, again, we got earnings this week. Yeah, SoFi's at 9.4%. The shorts have still not left SoFi alone. They tried to mess with Palantir 3 years ago. And I think the most they got up to was like 5%. And then I remember when Karp in 2024 went live on CNBC and talked about giving the Coke sellers their Coke. 2 weeks later, that short flow went down to 3%. And the joke at the time was like, no one wants to mess with Karp. And then it was just earnings after earnings after earnings. They kept executing, and people are like, you know, we're not touching this thing. We're just going to leave this alone. Sometimes you need your CEO to scare off the shorts. Zoom right there, big move today, 5.48%. Even Robinhood getting some love. That's up 1%. Cloudflare up. Now, why is Cloudflare up? I don't see a headline on this. But this one's getting some love, almost 9% on the day. I see 0 headlines on this one, but Cloudflare is getting, it's the second most expensive stock on a forward PE basis outside of Palantir is Cloudflare, which honestly it should be, because every time the internet goes down, it's because of Cloudflare. So I feel like they are super important. We have Palantir, Cloudflare, Snowflake. Figma's actually number 5th on the list. This is using forward PE. Shopify is in the middle. IoT is the cheapest. CrowdStrike there as well. But Palantir, Snowflake, and Cloudflare, the most expensive SaaS names. Opendoor going below 6. I'll ask the question again. I asked last week, does anyone still care about Opendoor? Like, I know it's supposed to be the real estate play, but mortgage rates haven't really come down. And even if mortgage rates come down, no one has explained to me how they're going to be profitable. And neither has the CEO. Every time I listen to him, he like sounds super motivational, but then when it comes to profitability, which is kind of what determines the PE multiple, there's not much to say. So I don't know, maybe the hype died down on this one, but look, if you bought it at 50 cents, you made good money. If you bought it at $2, you made good money. It just hasn't hit those $10 highs that it hit back in August for the past 7 months. Meta, did we hit 670? Oh, there it is, 670. 670 Dolores on Mr. Meta. That should be helping the SPY. Yep, look at SPY, 693. So I think Meta is leading the Meta and Apple, and Goog's helping a little bit. Nvidia trying to go green, Tesla trying to go green, but Apple, Microsoft, Meta, and Google leading the way for tech on the S&P 500. Would you buy Micron here? Let's do a poll in the chat. Who's buying Micron at 390? It's scary, man. It's like it shouldn't be, but it really shouldn't be when you look at the multiple. And for anyone who thinks it's cheap, like, don't let me saying it's scary dissuade you from buying it. It's just a little scary. Would you buy Micron here? Then again, every time you look at the cyclical argument, you find a new chart that's like, actually, this is not as cyclical as people think. Or if it is, the cycle is going to last for a long time. I mean, look at this chart, or this headline right here. Came out this morning. Data centers will consume 70% of memory chips made in 2026. Supply shortfall will cause the chip shortage to spread to other segments. There is an argument, it's a little bit of a funny thing, but there is memory that's put into calculators, and there is so much of a memory shortage that you might not have the ability to buy a calculator. Like, you might not be able to buy a calculator given the nature of the memory shortage. Now, Micron just bought a $1.8 billion Taiwan fab for extra revenue and profit, and they're building more in New York and Idaho. So the Micron CEO is on top of trying to get this shortage resolved. But the quote from him a couple of weeks ago was, we can only supply 50 to 65% of customer demand, of individual customers' demand allocations, because obviously there is this massive shortage. So if that shortage isn't stopping, then Micron's going higher, even if it's a $440 billion company. I didn't know calculators were still a thing. Yeah, I mean, well, see, most people use it on their phone, right? But I guess in school, people still have to use calculators. So it would be incredible if, like, there's an actual shortage of calculators. Rock Lab right there, 8508. Silver, are we still moving? Yeah, silver breaks 112, baby. Gold is getting ready to hit 5,100. 5,100. It's kind of scary looking at this when you think of what this means for the US dollar, but it's also like, we did this to ourselves. And I'm speaking as a representative of the United States. It's like we are the ones who decided to print more money. We're the ones who decide to recklessly spend the amount of money that we spend. So inevitably, people were going to one day say, we don't want to maybe be that allocated to something that's going to just devalue its own currency. Even if you could have a justified reason for spending the amount of money that we spend. But we're responsible for this. And if investors are choosing to allocate in other places, you can't blame them. Now, we could fix this by not spending as much money, but that would require actually having fiscal discipline, which it's not just the United States. No country has, but the United States in particular, we don't have it all. Which is supposed to be the bull case for Bitcoin. And it's become the bull case for gold. Like we spent the past 4 years hearing Michael Saylor say, this is exactly why people will buy Bitcoin. And instead, they're buying freaking gold. Although the fact that Bitcoin's holding 88 is still, to me, pretty impressive, given how much money is rotating out. So it's not like it's collapsed to like that 50,000 level or anything. Bitcoin right there, 88.3 on the day. Mike, thanks for the super chat. I think keeping some dry powder is the logical thing to do. The possible government shutdown can get ugly again. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you've got a lot of different catalysts that could be happening from a bunch of different places. Obviously, today the market does not care about a government shutdown, even if the poly market odds are at 80%. Who knows? Maybe Trump capitulates. I mean, last night he was talking about we might take some people out of Minnesota. I think Trump knows he can't afford a government shutdown in the midterm year. So there might be a world where they end up avoiding it. But right now it seems like it's possible. Walken, thanks for the super chat. Looking forward to the NYC meetup regarding SoFi. You're still doing any covered calls headed into earnings? I have a few covered calls, I would say on like 20% of my position, roundabout. But my goal is to kind of close them out on January 29th. And it's been working out pretty well because SoFi has been stuck. So I want to have 0 covered calls on January 30th. I want to let the shares be completely free. I'll probably capture 80 to 85% of the premium by Thursday if I close them out by then. So yeah, my goal, I really do think SoFi can make a run on Friday. I mean, knowing SoFi will probably be wrong and it goes to 23, but if it does make a run, I don't want to have any covered calls. So yeah, the goal is to close most of them by Thursday. Now, if this thing runs up in the next 2 days, which SoFi tends to do before earnings, that might make it a little harder to do. But as of now, SoFi's been kind of stuck. And I don't think it really will run that high because like the financials are kind of stuck. I mean, JP Morgan up today, but it took a nice little 4% haircut last week, 10% down for the year. So I do think if financials are kind of stuck until earnings, SoFi doesn't have a catalyst to go that much higher. Microsoft right there at 470 as well. Software's up today. IGV, look at that. That's up 1.4%, getting a little bit of love. Salesforce at 230. Going to invest in Mr. Beast. Adobe, that's up 1%. If SoFi says we are putting money into Beast Industries, my goodness, that would be pretty incredible. Do you think Broadcom's going down? I think Broadcom should stabilize. Broadcom below 300 would feel kind of stupid, given how much they've highlighted that ASIC demand is going higher. I get it didn't need to be at 420, but below 300, I think I get very interested to at least nibble. Even here, I don't think nibbling is crazy. 323 right here. Now, the problem with their last earnings is that their non-AI revenue was flat year over year, but then again, I don't know if that's the reason the street took them down. I think the street took them down because Hawk-Tan was like, yeah, that OpenAI 10 gigawatt deal we have, it's not starting for another year at the earliest. And that's when I think the street was like, oh, so you're not getting any money from these guys, even though you told us 3 weeks ago you were getting money from these guys. Okay, cool. 20% down. Boom. And maybe that changes, but that's exactly what happened to Oracle. And I think, there was enough pain that's been done on those two. ASTS down 6.5. BMNR 2837, that's down 1.5. AMD, are we going to lose 250? Oh, AMD getting a 3% hit right here. I don't know why it's getting a hit, but Nvidia trying to go green, even though that's still red. U.S. Treasury Department said it canceled $21 million of contracts with Booz Allen Hamilton after the consulting firm failed to protect taxpayer data to which it had access to. Wow. That's a hell of a reason to cancel. Look at that, 6% down on Booz Allen Hamilton. I think there's some software companies that work with the government that wouldn't mess up taxpayer data. There's at least one that I know of that might deserve that 21 million instead. AMD down because Nvidia is showing CPU demand. I don't know if that would be the reason. I feel like AMD's down just because it's taking a breather from last week. But it took a heavy move last week. I mean, 200 to 260 is pretty aggressive. PayPal, where is PayPal? Are we green today? PayPal, a little green. Again, Pelosi sold 5,000 shares of PayPal, 10,000 shares of Disney, and 45,000 shares of Apple. As per her latest disclosure, she bought, I should say, exercised options on Google, Nvidia, Amazon, and Tempest AI. So you do have her getting rid of PayPal. Intel down another 6%. This thing wants to go below 40. 57 million shares have been traded on it. But see, again, this is what I'm scared of happening to a memory name. Now, again, the memory stocks are in a totally different position than Intel, but just the sheer momentum. Intel was up 50% going into the earnings, and now it's down 30%. Like, I don't know. It just, some of these names, when they get that big of a run, and again, they beat earnings by 88%. They didn't have a horrible earning. They just, their guidance will low off. What if Micron, well, now Micron probably will not say their guidance is off because the memory demand is so unbelievably strong. But what if the demand expectations are a little bit higher than what Micron reports, and then the stock that's up so much just takes a dump? Like, it's not like we haven't seen that before. Definitely could imagine happening it to SanDisk, which is up a little bit right there. That's why I think it's scarier to buy them. What did you guys say on the poll? 75% of you say no, he would not buy Micron. Did the Netflix climber dude survive? Yes, he did. And it was the most inspiring thing I've seen in a very long time. For those that didn't watch it, this is the time lapse. The dude climbed up Taipei 101. No rope, no harness, one bad move, it's over. There were literally people in every floor taking pictures of him. People were screaming outside. I mean, the level of focus and energy and composure he needed to do this. It took an hour and 30 minutes. I couldn't watch it in the middle. I got too scared. I literally had to shut it off and just come back when he was close to being done. It's just like, you know, you have these moments in life where you're just inspired and you see humans do these things. It's unbelievable. Yeah, dude, guess how much he got paid for this? You could tell the guy really doesn't care about money and he cares about just like doing this for the passion. Because I feel like if I'm in a negotiation with Netflix and I'm about to risk my life to climb a tower 101 floors up, you know, I would ask for a couple $1 million, maybe. Maybe that's my market. I mean, I think Netflix is going to get a decent level of ROI from just live streaming the event, the viewers, subscribers. Even if Netflix doesn't, the fact that Netflix is the home for these types of things and like Prime is not the home, that should be worth money. They gave him 500 grand, which again, for an hour and 30 minutes, good money. But also it's like, dude, 500 grand for that is kind of wild. Yeah, and he has a family. His 2 kids. This was the selfie he took at the top. But obviously, he doesn't care about the money. He cared about doing this, and he was just happy he had a platform to do this. So it was incredible to see. Absolutely incredible. Yeah, you literally watch him start from the sidewalk. It's kind of crazy the way he thinks about, like, the New York Times was like, hold on, do I have the quote? It was kind of hilarious. Yeah, look at this. So the New York, it's kind of funny. The New York Times asked him about, like, what do you think about what happens when you die? So they were like, it's that your loss would be felt in a deep way for more than just your wife. And he says, kind of. I mean, baby Alice wouldn't remember. Baby June probably wouldn't remember. She'll be 4 in another month. It'd be felt, and obviously it'd be super hard for Sandy, his wife, but they'd be well provided for. I don't feel like I'd be leaving them in the lurch. They wouldn't be necessarily even traumatized for their whole lives. And then the New York Times was like, well, your dad died when you were 19. What kind of impact did you have? He said, I mean, you never really know, because at the time you're just kind of like, that's life and shit happens. It was just kind of a stark reminder your time is infinite. And then they were like, do you think about what consequences this has on your family? And he's like, not really. We don't talk about it a ton, because obviously it's upsetting for my wife. We occasionally joke about how long she would have to wait to start dating again, how hard it would be to find someone with the kids and all that. But that's just us joking around. Then they're like, do you think about it too much? He's like, yeah, I mean, you can't go soloing. Every time you go soloing in the mountains, you consider that things can end pretty quickly. He's kind of just like, if it happens, it happens. And the wife and the kids are provided for. And the kids probably won't even remember me because they're super young. But like, I'm still going to go do it. Which is, I mean, it's very, I guess stoic is the word. Like the way he thinks about this is just very like, hey, this is my goal. I will accomplish it. I know that people care about me, but I can't live unless I feel like I'm alive. And this is what makes me feel like I'm alive. And this is what we're going to do. And his wife is super supportive. I mean, she was at the top waiting for him to climb up there. S&P right there, 692.95, just lower below 693, but still up 0.5% on the day. You should see his other climbs. This one is nothing compared to what he's done. Yeah, so his free solo documentary in 2018 honestly looks way harder than the tower. The tower, you know, speaking in a relative sense, is actually pretty easy compared to the other stuff he's done. But still, with all those people taking pictures, the big, I mean, if you fall, you're basically dying in front of millions of people watching and then thousands of people on the street. Like, that level of pressure is just, it's pretty incredible. Oscar right there, that's up 0.45. Cloudflare up 10%. I still don't have the headline for that. But Cloudflare really getting some love. Uber 150 price target. That couldn't do anything for the stock. Barely up on the day. AppLovin. That is up 4%. Okay, let's see what other stuff we have. If we have any other big headlines. The EU is probing X over Grok and AI deepfakes. So that's something that Elon's going to have to deal with soon. Let's get an update on this shutdown thing, see if there's any updates there. 57 on fear and greed. We'll be climbing the Empire State Building at the New York City meetup. It's a good idea. I haven't considered that. Maybe next year for the 3rd New York meetup, but not for the. I did visit the venue over the weekend though. It's a really nice venue, so I think it'll be fun. It'll be exciting to see people there on Sunday.
Until changes are made following, of course, that shooting and killing now of a second person this past weekend. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said over the weekend that there are not enough Democrats right now to join with Republicans to pass the bill. And look, even Democrats who consistently voted with Republicans last time on reopening the government are now firmly opposed. One of them, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, tweeted that she would oppose DHS funding until changes are made. And she said further that Democrats need to, quote, fight for a Department of Homeland Security that respects Americans' constitutional rights and preserves federal law enforcement's essential role to keep us safe. Now, DHS funding is only one of 6 parts of the government that will run out of funding at midnight on Saturday, so end of day Friday. And the other 5 parts, they do have strong bipartisan support. Those bills could easily pass. Yet sources are telling me that right now, Senate Republican leadership, they are not planning on breaking up that package to remove DHS funding from it. That is going to increase the chances of a partial government shutdown. And that shutdown would include, among other things, the Defense Department, healthcare programs, financial service agencies, and of course, the Labor Department. And remember, that collects that critical jobs data as well as other data there. Now, it's not clear exactly how a shutdown of DHS would impact ICE and the similar operations. Remember, in the last shutdown, many of the agency's programs, they were deemed critical and continued. Plus, Trump's mega tax package that Congress passed last year provided a windfall $170 billion for the department, funding that they have access to, even if this annual funding bill is held up. Guys?
Would any Senate Republicans be on board with stripping out the DHS bill, or do they need unanimous consent? How does that work?
Sarah, it's 60 votes, and obviously right now Republicans, they've only got 53, so they would need a handful of Democrats to join them, and it just doesn't seem like the math is going to math and they're going to have enough. Now, no Republicans at this point have said that they need to stop funding for DHS, although you have heard a number of Republicans come out, say there needs to be an investigation, that state and local need to be working with the federal government on that investigation. You're hearing calls to have the heads of ICE and the Customs and Border Patrol come up to the Hill and testify. So you are beginning to actually see some Republicans break a little bit with the administration on how this is being handled and what needs to happen yet, but they haven't gone as far as Democrats in saying that they don't believe they can pass this DHS funding bill.
Got it.
A lot of it seems like it's contingent on having an investigation, and I think that might be the compromise where Democrats, Nebius, by the way, losing its entire pump, Democrats potentially voting to allow DHS and ICE to be funded if there is an in-depth investigation into what happened. But you've also got Adam Schiff, Chuck Schumer, a lot of the party leaders saying we're just not going to give another dollar to DHS and ICE. So, I mean, we got 5 days. Saturday at midnight, the funding officially goes dry, and then it's going to be up to Trump and Mike Johnson to figure out how to navigate votes coming in or out for this bill. Meta right there at 669, S&P 500 at 692, Bitcoin just below 88, getting hit. Look at that, 88.7 to 87.7, $1,000 candle within like 5 minutes on Bitcoin as that one goes down. Quantum stocks, are they getting hit? Yeah, D-Wave down 5, IONQ down 2, Rigetti down 4, Rare Earth also getting hit. MP 9%, ugly. USAR 10%. This thing was up 30%, so it's lost a decent chunk of gains. And then CRML is also down 12%. I'm not sure why the rare earths are getting hit outside of they ran up too much last week, but the fact that USAR lost 20% of its move also means that the entire sector getting some pain. What about Ondas? Is that one green? Ondas goes red. Hasn't seen 11 in a couple weeks. I mean, it was at 12.30 to 14 for the majority of the past 2 weeks. There you go, 11.37. That's down 7%. Tesla's down 3. All right, so you're seeing a lot of growth names go red. The reason the S&P is up is because of Meta, Microsoft, and Apple. Tesla 437. Tesla was pushing 450 on Friday. BM&R now down 3.4. Software is actually green today. Adobe and Salesforce holding on. AppLovin still up 4. Shopify still down. And then the bank's still down as well. Coinbase at 212. Iran probably getting hit as well. Iran, there you go, 53.84. That's down 5. ASTS, that's down 8. All right, so a lot of those growth names from last week ended up getting a little bit of a hit. What do you think of Zeta at these prices? I like it. I think Zeta's cheap. I think after earnings, stock's closer to 30, at least above 25 in my opinion, but they got to put up a good earnings. They got to have their 18th consecutive beat and raise, and if they can get there, that would be bullish. Rocket Lab, 83.50. You got Ron DeSantis, who just tweeted, ouch, about the dollar going down. I don't know if that's a little bit of a shade at Trump right there. You did have, what's his name? Ted Cruz. Axios reported that Ted Cruz and Trump got into a little bit of a, not a fight per se, but you know, Trump wasn't the happiest at Ted Cruz. Cruz was basically saying the tariffs are stupid and that we're going to absolutely lose the midterms and that you're going to be impeached every single week. And then Trump said, F you, Ted, according to what Cruz said. So Cruz said, Mr. President, if we go to November 2026 and people's 401ks are down 30% and prices are up 10 to 20% in the supermarket, we're going into the election day facing a bloodbath. You're going to lose the House. You're going to lose the Senate. You're going to spend the next 2 years being impeached every single week. And basically Trump said F you. So I don't think Cruz is necessarily wrong here. Obviously, if people's retirement accounts are down and prices are up, that's not going to be good. I think Trump is doing a lot of things, or trying to do a lot of things, to make sure that doesn't happen. But this shutdown's not going to help if that takes place. I've been in Florida for 60 years. I hate Ron DeSantis. He's an ego meathead. You know, I think it's funny. There's a lot of mixed opinions on DeSantis in Florida. There's some people that swear by him and think he's like the best person that's ever run the state. But his election was relatively close, I think 4 years ago. I forgot the guy he went up against, but it wasn't like a blowout, the guy he was going up against. And he was the front runner for the nominee until Trump decided to run again. And then, Trump ended up winning, but you do have a lot of mixed opinions on DeSantis. Same thing with Ted Cruz, who left Texas before the snowstorm. All right, what else we got? What else do we have here? I think those are most of the macro updates. You got Carney responding to Trump. Someone just asked him if he's offended that Trump called him a governor. Here's what Carney had to say.
Are you offended by being called governor?
I mean, I think in this role, you get called a lot of things, a lot of time, and I'm not going to comment on every tweet or truth or comment from whoever. So I can handle it.
And this is what Carney said a couple of days ago when he was asked about clarifying his thoughts on what the quote unquote New World Order actually meant.
Prime Minister Brian Platt with Bloomberg News. Yesterday, when you met with Premier Lee, one of the things you said in the public remarks was this partnership, Canada and China, this new partnership sets us up well for the New World Order. What did you mean by that? What is the New World Order?
Well, it's a great question, Brian, because I think the world is still determining what that order is going to be. And let's be clear what we're talking about first and foremost, which is what are the trading. What is going to govern global trade? What is the role of the WTO going to be? How important are bilateral deals such as the one we're developing, plurilateral deals, if I can use that term, Trans-Pacific Partnership, potential linkages between Trans-Pacific Partnership and the EU? Where is financial regulation, payment system regulation going to fit into that? All of these aspects. I mean, use fancy word, like the architecture, the multilateral system that has been developing these is being eroded, to use a polite term, undercut, use another term. So the question is, what gets built in that place? How much of a patchwork is it? How much is it just on a bilateral basis? Or where do like-minded countries in certain areas? So like-minded countries, just to be clear, doesn't mean you agree on everything. Aspects, for example, on digital trade or agricultural trade, climate finance as another area, to move into areas of geostrategy, geosecurity. You will have different coalitions that are formed. So what this partnership does is in areas, for example, of clean energy, conventional energy, agriculture, as we were just talking about, and financial services, which we've talked less about, but the evolution of the global financial system.
So, I mean, basically, Carney's describing a world in which there are other countries outside of the United States that has a lot more momentum when it comes to figuring out how the world is going to work, geopolitically, economically, socially. And I think that's kind of the reason he even took the meeting over the past weekend with China. Now, in China, you talk about a new world order. For those that haven't heard about it, so in 2012, when Xi rose to power of the CCP, he did a complete purge of the leadership, right, to kind of establish his power and ultimately become who he is today. Over the weekend, he got rid of some of his top generals and military officials. One of them, who's been there 75 years old for the past 30 years. This guy right here, Xi is accusing him, either this is propaganda or this is true, of leaking nuclear weapon secrets to the United States. Now, that might be a front for the actual reason he's getting rid of him, which is that he doesn't want to invade Taiwan, and Xi is trying to assemble a coalition of people that are ideologically aligned to invade Taiwan. Or this might be legit that he was functioning as a double spy for the United States. But the point is, you're seeing a lot of shakeup in the China ecosystem. The Economist had a really good article this weekend basically saying this is the craziest mix-up you've seen of military officials and generals since 2012. And I just think across the entire world, there are various different things that are taking place. And China is just another one of the pieces of the pie for how this ends up playing out over the next 10 years. These are all the company assets, by the way. Silver passing 6 trillion. I thought it was at 5.7. It's at 6.2, officially 2 trillion ahead of Nvidia. Gold is at 35 trillion. Silver and gold now $41 trillion. If that guy was leaking, he would disappear. So no, China, from reports from the Wall Street Journal, no one has seen this official, General Zhang Yuxia. I'm definitely saying his name wrong, but people haven't seen him in the past 15 days. I don't know if they're going to, kill him or if he's just going to be put in solitary confinement. But the Wall Street Journal is reporting that no one has seen him over the past 2 weeks, and now it is being revealed that Xi doesn't really want him to be in power anymore. There was a crazy video from, I think this was like 2023, where Xi had his guys remove one of the officials in the, when the House and the Senate meet together for a joint session of Congress, basically that's what they were doing in China. And Xi had one of his guys removed. And it was kind of incredible because, is this it? Yeah, this is it right here. 3 years ago. He's just sitting, doing his thing. He knows he ends up getting picked up and escorted. Xi right there giving some orders. And then look at him. He already knows what's about to happen. He already knows shit's hitting the fan right here. Like, imagine that happened in the United States. Imagine the president just tells Ted Cruz to go get AOC and take her out of here. Like I know the United States has their issues, but this stuff is a little different. And there he is. He's just getting removed. So it is kind of crazy, but it looks like that's what happened with one of the military leaders over the weekend as well. Venture Global 950, that one getting it. Tesla down 2.3%. Baba, what do we got for Baba? Is that one up a little bit? Baba 172. Baba did get a 230 price target this morning, which I think is kind of low. I mean, when you look at the fundamentals of Baba, this thing probably should be a $300 stock, but it has had an incredible run. SoFi right there, just below 26 as well. All right, is that it? Those most of the headlines. I think that's pretty much it for today. Baidu down. Doug says I'm buying the dip. Baidu right there down 3.4%. Dougie, I think, called this thing in November or October, and it's done incredible. Yeah, this thing was at 107 around November. Look at that. 100 to 150, basically. This one's had a hell of a run. JD is the only China stock that hasn't done anything, which is horrible because JD is the most hyped up Chinese name on social media. I mean, people bought the $40 call for January 16th had like 300,000 open interest in call volume. So Baidu's moved, Baba's moved. JD is the one that's been stuck since then. What do you think about Skywater? Well, it doesn't matter anymore. IONQ bought them. I mean, I actually was trying to form an opinion on this, but they got bought out. They're done. 1.8 billion. I thought it was a very small premium to what they should be trading at. Also, this thing wasn't that expensive. It was trading at 4 times sales. So it's not like it was like a meme stock, right? And maybe it was meme-ish, but it wasn't like super crazy expensive. I cannot believe they took a $1.8 billion buy. I mean, it makes you think that internal management really didn't have a lot of confidence in their trajectory, and they just wanted to get it. They wanted to get liquidity. They wanted to get an exit. But that one's done now. Now, maybe there's an arbitrage. That stock's trading at 33. The buyout's at 35. I mean, this is where there's the classic arbitrage play if the acquisition is approved and goes through. But if it doesn't go through, then maybe that arbitrage doesn't exactly work out. I'm disappointed they got bought. I think a lot of people were disappointed this morning. That's the first piece of news I saw this morning, and the reaction was just like, what? They're going to sell themselves to a quantum company? That's confusing. ServiceNow, what are we doing here? ServiceNow, $134.99. That's up 1.4%. Nothing too crazy. Meta is still 670. Do you still want to sell in the money calls on BM&R? Yes, I do. I've been waiting for 35 to sell them. I think at some point I might just have to pull the trigger. And so the problem is with selling the in the money calls, you're basically agreeing to say, I'm done with the stock up to $40, $42 for a year out, or even 6-7 months out. But if it rockets, you get hit pretty bad. Now that's contingent on ETH rocketing. I know sentiment on ETH is bad right now, but that also makes me think that it has some room to run. I mean, like it's been coiling up for almost 5 months at this point. It actually is kind of healthy if ETH stays in this range for the next 5 months. I know BM&R would do nothing, but if it is just coiling up and Tom Lee gets to buy a lot more ETH at this range, if it doesn't get chopped in half, then eventually when it breaks out, that would be very good for BM&R. And so that's the hesitation I have on selling those calls. Any predictions on Super Bowl for Hood? So there was like 80 million contracts that were traded yesterday between the Patriots and the Seahawks game, which, by the way, I was right. I said Patriots, Seahawks, and that's what happened. So got the predictions right. But I think for the Super Bowl, I think there'll be well over 200 million contracts that get traded on Hood. Is that going to be good for Robinhood? Yeah, of course. But the problem is after the Super Bowl, like there's kind of a sports dead period, right? We have the NBA, but the NBA doesn't get as much traction as football, especially until the playoffs. And so what's next after football ends for the prediction markets? It might just be a little bit of a dull period. But it should be bullish for them. And I think the Seahawks are the favorite, right? In the Super Bowl. Like the Seahawks are, from my understanding, objectively better than the Patriots. But it should be a pretty exciting game. Yeah, but the World Cup's in the summer. We still have to go through the spring. Basically, we have to get from March to June. Oh, March Madness. Yeah, but March Madness doesn't have the pull of NFL. Like, I think you will get some volume on March Madness. I don't know if you're going to get NFL type of volume. The Olympics start in the summer, though, right? The Olympics is going to be a big deal, too. Yes, it does. All right. Look, if March Madness can supply the volume, I'm not complaining about it. I just personally, I feel like the NFL captures way more attention than basketball does. Okay, so then March Madness, that's going to be the next thing. Here's the thing. So Robinhood will do, call it 85 million in revenue on prediction markets this quarter, and they're probably setting up for 100 million in Q1. If they can grow that to 120, 150 million in Q2, I mean, that'll put them on an annual run rate for basically $500 million of revenue on prediction markets. Because all they need to do is get through Q2. Q3, they get all the Olympic World Cup stuff. Q4, they have NFL and NBA start again. Q2 is literally, they just need to find something to get them through Q2. And I guess maybe it is March Madness at that point. The South is obsessed with college sports. All right, well, that should be what helps them. Now, again, if crypto was about 250 to 300 million revenue a quarter for Hood, let's say that gets cut to like 180 million or something like that. If prediction markets can pull up another 100 million, that maybe starts to close the gap. So you're not going to see massive growth on Hood, but you're still going to not see it be hit too bad. The earnings expectations for Hood, looking at it right now, 1.35 billion Street wants for Q4. So that's the number they have to beat as we get in there. That's fair. March Madness is still part of Q1. Yeah, because it's January, February, March, right? Yeah, that's fair. That's true, actually. April, May, June. March Madness, I mean, there's a couple games in April, but most of March Madness is still Q1. World Cup, yes, that's in the summer. And the U.S. is hosting the World Cup this year. So that's going to be important. It's in L.A., right? Oh, no, it's Canada, Mexico, and the United States. It's going to be in Atlanta, Boston, Dallas, Houston, Kansas, LA, Miami, New York, Philadelphia, Seattle, and San Francisco. With the the finals at the MetLife Stadium? That's crazy. I could actually go to the final. Well, the tickets are probably already booked, right? There's no way I'm getting a ticket to that. Wait, so hold on. Is Ronaldo competing again? Is he going to get... This is going to be like his final attempt to win a World Cup, right? And I'm assuming Messi is competing again as well. But he's still representing Portugal, right? He's not representing Saudi Arabia because he's not from Saudi Arabia. I want Ronaldo to win. I feel like he's too great to not have that on his resume. But it would be pretty cool to see him get it. Yeah, it's by nationality. I'm trying to confidently talk about sports. Oh my gosh. You know, there was a time in my life where I was super big into sports, but that was like high school, and then I stopped caring about it. And now I act like I try to care about it, but in reality, I'm caring about it. What else? What else do we got? What else? I think these are most of the headlines. Nothing else too crazy. Cheerleading isn't a sport. Okay, first of all, I played basketball. It's not a cheerleader. Although I did date one of the cheerleaders. Now, none of you are going to believe that. None of you are going to believe that, but it is true. She was a sophomore. I was a freshman. I did date one of the cheerleaders. She was cute too. She was very cute. You know, it was funny because the way I found out she liked me is one of her girlfriends came up to me and she's like, she really likes your hair. I was like, really? It's like, okay. And I just walked up to her in the cafeteria and I was like, hey, none of you will believe me on this, bro, but it's true. It is so true. I need to get my boy Lewis. Lewis was one of my best friends in freshman year. He'll remember this whole story. I haven't talked to him in a long time though. You only dated her because you were the male cheerleader. I was actually starting freshman JV point guard. Okay, so I think I had a little bit of clout. Oh, this was really important. This is the Google DeepMind CEO. Here's what he had to say about robotics. Again, Google invested a lot of money into Apptronic. They are thinking heavily about humanoid robotics. Here's what he had to say about where robots are going. Dude, why do none of you believe me? I need to find this girl, bro. I'm sure she's still on Facebook. I need to literally tell her what my life has become, and I need her to call in and be like, yeah, we dated freshman year. Like, I will find a way to do that. None of you are believing me. Literally 0 people are believing me here. This is kind of ridiculous.
Scientific progress, discovering new materials, even we've seen now Gemini being integrated into humanoid robots. Is the AlphaFold moment for the physical world and AI here? What is that and what does that look like?
Yeah, I spent a lot of the last year actually looking very carefully into robotics. I do think we're on the cusp of a kind of breakthrough moment in physical intelligence. I still think we're about 18 months, 2 years away from we need to do more research, but I think the foundation models like Gemini show the way forward. I mean, from the beginning, we made Gemini multimodal, so it could understand the physical world for multiple reasons. One was so we could build a universal assistant, maybe that exists on your glasses or your phone that understands the world around you. But of course, a second use of that would be for robotics.
So what does that moment for the physical world look like?
I think it's having robots, reliably do useful tasks out in the world. And I think there's a few things holding that back still. Part of it is the algorithms are still not quite there. They need a little bit more robustness. They have to work with less data than you get for the LLMs or the models that work on just digital realm. You can sort of create synthetic data. It's a lot harder to make that kind of data. And there's still sort of some problems in the hardware that are not solved, specifically things like the arm and the hand. Actually, when you look into robotics very carefully, you get a newfound appreciation, at least I did, for the human hand and how exquisite evolution has designed that. It's incredible. And it's very hard to match the reliability, the strength, and the dexterity that the human hand has. So there's still quite a lot, in my opinion, pieces that put together, but there's very exciting things. I mean, we just announced a new deep collaboration with Boston Dynamics. They've got some very exciting robots in Hyundai and actually applying it to automotive manufacturing. And we'll see over the next year how that goes in sort of prototype form. And then maybe in a year or two, we'll have some really impressive demonstrations that we can scale up.
Dude, the robots are coming. The robots are coming. Whether it's Google or Tesla, one of these guys are going to bring robots to humanity. Hopefully both of them. And it's going to be a big deal when it does happen. But it's another way to get diversified exposure into the AI ecosystem with Google. You know, we were talking about this on the Friday close. This is what Microsoft doesn't have. Microsoft doesn't have a moonshot. They don't have self-driving. They don't have robots. They have Copilot, which is cool, but not cool enough. They have obviously Azure and the enterprise stack, which is a phenomenal business. But like Google and Amazon both and Tesla, all three of them have these like things that they're working on that are just like, they might not work, but if they do, it should be really accretive to shareholders. And I feel like OpenAI is the moonshot, which Microsoft owns 30% of, which is, I mean, that's good money. It's just, I think the street's wondering, hey, will they ever get liquid on this? Will they actually get to materially benefit from 30% of an ownership of a $1 trillion company one day? I feel the day of IPO, Microsoft is selling a good chunk of Open. I feel like they have to. Like they have to make sure they reap some of the benefits of this because they really haven't taken a lot of those AI risks like Google and Amazon have, or even like Meta has outside of OpenAI. Now, they put in $1 billion. They put in $15 billion in 2023. It's turned into $120 billion or something. It'll eventually turn into probably 150, 200 billion, but they're going to have to take some of those profits eventually. Well, there is another Microsoft headline today. That's probably why it's moving up right here. Microsoft unveils latest AI chip to reduce reliance on Nvidia. Every time we see these headlines, though, it's like, is it actually going to stop reliance on Nvidia? Microsoft is rolling out its second generation AI chip, the centerpiece of the company's push to power its services more efficiently and provide an alternative to Nvidia hardware. See, again, this is good for them not spending money on Nvidia. I don't know if it's good for them selling chips to the marketplace like a Google TPU or an Amazon Trainium. This feels more like an internal thing for them to just not have to spend as much CapEx, which makes sense. But it's not necessarily a new line of business, I think, that they would be able to scale meaningfully. I mean, we saw this with Intel. When we underplay the supply chain, anyone who does, I think, is making a massive mistake. Like Intel had an amazing earnings in terms of demand, but literally it was embarrassing. The CFO on the call was like, we messed up with executing on the supply chain. It's not easy to fabricate these chips and bring them to life and get them into the hands of customers. Like it's really complex what NVIDIA and AMD have been able to do, and Broadcom. And I think that's why they continue to get a premium. All right, are we done? I think that's it for the day. 11:10. Bascent is going to be live on Wednesday to introduce the Trump accounts, those $1,000 accounts, they're going to be doing a summit. Wow, they already made a Twitter handle for it called Trump Accounts. Nicki Minaj will be there. Carolyn Levitt, Michael Dell, Brad Gerstner, Ted Cruz, and Trump and Besant. Okay, Trump Accounts. There you go. Looks like we'll have a stream there. So Wednesday's going to have a lot. You're going to have this stream. You're going to have FOMC. You're going to have big tech earnings. You're going to have a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff on Wednesday and then Apple on Thursday. All right, that's what we got. Let's do word of the day. See what we've got here. Okay, I've never heard this word before. Maybe some of you guys have. Yeah, SoFi on Friday as well. That's going to be a big one. Redolent, strongly suggestive of something evoking a particular feeling, memory, or atmosphere. The memo was redolent of early .com optimism, big vision, little discipline. Let's see how to say this. I feel like I said it right. Redolent.
Redolent.
All right, there you go. Not too bad. I got the last couple three correct. Mid is redolent about dating a cheerleader. Dude, I'm not lying. I'm really not like, what do I get from lying about this? I literally remember it was like this classic, like, you guys are getting into my memory. I remember I would go up to her locker every day after school. You know the guy that like hangs by at the locker while like the girl is like packing up her stuff. I would be there every single day. This was freshman year, so this was 2012. This was early too. Tryouts were in October. Yeah, this was like November, freshman year. I'm so serious about this, dude. I remember this like it was yesterday. I remember our first kiss. It was in the stairwell. I was taking her downstairs. Like I remember all this shit. No one's gonna believe me, even though these are pretty specific things. Like I'm not using ChatGPT right now to make up a story. But it's like it's real. It's legit. Sympathy kiss. Oh my gosh. I hope the cheerleader isn't married. You'll never find her if she's. It was kind of awkward though, because it was like a 4 or 5 month thing. It wasn't like a super serious relationship. Then we broke up, and then the year after I took chemistry, and she ended up being in my chemistry class because our school had this weird thing where they did a mix of sophomores and juniors in the same electives. So she was a junior, I was a sophomore, and we had chemistry together. Not going to make the chemistry joke, don't worry. But we sat together and I'd have rekindled some chemistry. That's all I'm going to say, but we didn't get back together or anything. But see, like, how do I make that up right now? Like, how do I lie about that? How do I lie about literally having chemistry class with her the year after? I'm not lying. Your BF is getting jealous. Davis is coming on Thursday. A lot of you guys are coming on Thursday. A bunch of the mods are coming. Davis, like, you better have flowers when you pick me up at the airport. I'm like, bro, you are so gay. It's getting ridiculous. But yeah, it'll be fun. We'll have a lot of Instagram stories over the weekend. Again, if you're not at the meetup, you can follow on Instagram. We'll kind of be like vlogging the whole thing. I'll share my Instagram in the chat. And we got about 10 spots left for the meetup. Again, link is in the description if anyone wants to show up. Got 10 spots left. And then LA is happening March 28th confirmed. LA, March 28th confirmed. I will have the LA tickets available February 2nd. February 2nd, Culver City. The tickets will be available on February 2nd. I'll be putting it out the day after the New York City meetup. But LA, March 28th confirmed. If anyone wants to come to LA, you can keep that weekend free. I'm basically going to be in California for 2 weeks in March. So I decided I'm going to go to GTC, which is March 16th to March 19th for Nvidia. And then there's no point of coming back to Jersey and then going back for the LA meetup. So I'm just going to stay a separate week in LA until the meetup. So I will be spending the last 2 weeks of March in California. I'm going to try to make it super productive. We're going to try to get a bunch of stuff done, hopefully schedule a bunch of interviews and podcasts with people. I mean, there's plenty of things to do in California. So I'll be living the last 2 weeks of March in LA or San Jose and then LA. And then Singapore is looking like April 5th. Not confirmed yet, but we're going to be going straight from California to Singapore. So March is going to be a pretty heavy month, but excited for it. And it should be a good time. And then we'll figure out what the next meetup after this will happen in May. So March is LA, April, early Singapore, and then probably end of May will be the next meetup. And I don't know what state that'll be. I'm thinking Chicago, maybe, but we'll figure out what we do for May. I think London and Europe, that's going to be more in the summer. I haven't even started planning that yet, but London definitely should be happening this year. Germany should be happening this year, but that might be later in the summer. Honestly, Toronto might be a candidate for May as well. I love Toronto. That might be a candidate for May as well again. But we already did Toronto last year, so I'm trying to do places we haven't done, and I know Chicago we haven't done yet. All right, cool. That's it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Appreciate it. We'll be back for the market close. Technical Tuesday tomorrow. The earnings today, we have nothing on the close. Wednesday is the big day. Wednesday, we start earnings tomorrow. Very important company, UPS, will be reporting earnings. So something that we should all pay attention to going into the pre-markets. And then Friday, we've got SoFi. Wednesday is the big day. Wednesday, we're listening to Meta first. Meta from 4:30 to 5:30, then Tesla starting at 5:30. So we're going to miss a lot of the early part of the Tesla call, but I think that's okay because it's going to be pretty boring. We will get to Tesla's Q&A after Meta, but we'll be covering Meta, Microsoft, and Tesla. At the same time as I say that, wow, silver, 113.60, and gold at 5,100. My goodness, copper still up 5% on the day. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. If you're in the commodities, congratulations as they continue to just make some massive runs. All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. I'll see you guys on the market close. Bye, everybody. Have a good one.